Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, November 20th. This is a regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. We are being audio and video recorded. So really, I should take note of that because I'm the one who gets myself in trouble, but everyone else take note of that. At the start of the meeting, we are joined by, I am Josh Grensman, Councilor at Large from Ward 4, Chair of the Committee. Vice Chair of the Committee, Bill Humphrey from Ward 5 is with us online. Councilor Julian Maliki from Ward 3 is here. Councilor Alan Lobovitz from Ward 6 is here. Councilor Stephen Farrell from Ward 8 is here. I believe those are the only members of the committee. In the room, Commissioner Nicole Banks, Park Recreation and Culture is here. And online, our election supervisor, John Doyle, is here, which leads me nicely into our first item, which is 377-24, request to set a date for a special election. I'm going to take these two items together, okay, because second item 458-24, this is a request to set early voting hours for the 2025 special election. And in large part, the two items go hand in hand, obviously, the date of the special election and the early voting hours. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Doyle. You can present to us the options, some of which we have in our packet. And then the job for this committee is to, again, set the date and then set the early voting hours, or at least make our recommendation about the date and the early voting hours for the special election that we need to have. This is, for folks who don't know, the Ward 7 seat on the school committee has been vacated. So this is the special election to fill that seat. And as folks probably know, school committee members are elected at large. So the whole city will be voting. Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee members. Let me just share my screen, get this PowerPoint rocking and rolling here.
Roll here at the Programs and Services Committee.
All right. Okay, so like the chairman said, there is a vacancy in the Ward 7 School Committee. And due to as we kind of sit here now, due to the rules and regulations that we have to follow regarding nomination papers, and I'll get into that. The timeline that we're looking at,
John, the visual is not on the full screen.
Oh.
It's just very small, so they're not going to be able to see it in the room.
Oh, you know what? Sorry about that. And there we go. All set? Okay. All right. Thank you, Councilor Humphrey. Appreciate it. All right. So like I was saying, the way with the nomination papers and different deadlines that we have to still meet, even though it's municipal election, we still follow a lot of the MGLs and those regulations. So we're looking at an election sometime in March. That would leave us with it would be Tuesday. The date, well, I'll say this first. The date recommended by the Election Commission on our meeting on Monday, this past Monday, the 18th, was Tuesday, March 18th. That was recommended for nothing, for 4 yeas, 0 nays. So here is kind of an outline of the dates here, the three prospective dates. That would be March 11th, March 18th, and March 25th, all 2025. Here we have all the different deadlines that would correspond if we picked, the respective, it corresponds to that respective election date. The first timeline here that we're looking at is when nomination papers would be available. Part of the reason the Election Commission did not recommend the 11th, this is probably notable and worth mentioning, is that nomination papers would be available on the 31st, on New Year's Eve. Not really, a lot of people might be away out of town. We'll have people in the office that day to hand out the papers if anyone comes by between the hours of 8:30 and 5. Of course, we'll be staffed, but I don't know how they didn't know how the holidays would affect for the candidates coming in and picking them up. And it's not, we have the windows about 2.5, 3 weeks for them to pick up the papers and get them back. So we want to give them as much time as possible. So if we were to go, or if the committee was to favorably recommend the 18th, it would look like this. Nomination papers available on January 7th. They would be due back to the city clerk's office on January 28th. February 11th is when we as the city clerk's office or the election commission would have to certify those papers. So that's two full weeks to certify. February 13th is when that's the last, at 5 p.m. is the last day and hour for objections. And then at 5:15 is when if it's uncontested, or if it is a contested race, that's when we draw names out of a hat to determine the ballot order. Around the 20th is when we could start printing and mailing ballots. And then, 10 days before the election is when that's the deadline to register to vote for that election. 5 business days before the 18th would be when folks have to apply for vote by mail or absentee ballot. So you'll see the other dates there, along with the for the election if it was to be held on the 11th and 25th. I won't run through all those; it's a little bit redundant. So, Chairman, would you like me to go right into the early voting hours, or do you want me, or would the committee like to vote on this first and then me move to the next item?
Thank you, John. I think first, let's just have a little discussion about the date. We are going to take the items together, but I think it'll be most helpful if you get a sense of the committee where they are on the date for the special election, because then obviously the early voting hours correlate to that. So, as folks can see, I think he was pretty clear, but the Elections Commission really looked at 3 possible dates for the special election, March 11th, 18th, and 25th. Looked at what that would do in terms of the calendar, selected March 18th. I think folks probably know, but under the city charter, when filling a special election, a person gets elected and then they get sworn in immediately. So there's no sort of downtime in between the election and the swearing in, as there is, for example, in our regular elections, when we get elected in November and then January 1st, we get sworn in. So special election vacancies are filled immediately. So let me see if anyone has any questions in terms of the date, or if anyone wanted to make a motion again for, I think March 18th is what we're looking at, but Councilor Lopez.
I have a question. I've never dealt with this before. Maybe not this. So the signatures are certified on, I can't see that very well. So signatures are certified on what date, where people know that they actually would be a candidate?
They would be certified on February 11th. That's when we would know at 5 p.m. That's when we would know for certainty who has the signatures and who doesn't, if that's the case.
Okay, so we're talking about what, 5 weeks or so between then and the election?
Yes.
Correct.
So if there's more than one candidate, normally there's a period of time where people can campaign, have a debate. But this seems such a short time for people to be able to present themselves, especially if it's citywide. So could somebody comment on that? Maybe.
I mean, I'm happy to comment, which is that campaigning can take place at any time. So people could be campaigning now for the seat. And in most cases, campaigns begin prior to signature
So they would
papers becoming
declare their
available.
candidacy
Right.
publicly, even though they haven't been certified to actually be able to vote.
They could. What
Okay.
the schedule we're looking at is really the mechanical dates of when the city is assured of who will appear on the ballot. I mean,
Right.
even after, the deadline to submit the papers, individuals could launch a candidacy for a write-in campaign.
How many signatures do you?
I believe it's 150. Is that right, Mr. Doyle?
That is correct.
They can't start collecting.
They have to wait until the papers are available, which I think that's the first date on here. That would be January 7th.
So they'll have a more compressed time to collect signatures than usual.
They should be prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You know you're gonna do.
You can do it standing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when it comes to a special election, it's usually sort of a more condensed, it's kind of like, hey, we got something to do, let's do it as quickly as possible. There are timelines that need to be filled as, the state laws are outlined. But usually the impetus is on speed to try and get the seat filled.
So the latest date, according to the state, would be what? Is there a time in which, according to state law, that this has to happen? So government.
This is up to the city. As far as I know, Mr. Doyle can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is up to the city to set the date. I don't even think it has to be a Tuesday for a special election. We just generally prefer those.
Yes, correct. I believe the law says that within the election has to happen within 120 days of it being set by the city council or select board, whichever municipality it is. And yeah, as far as the day of the week, we went all with Tuesday because that's the day that people most closely associate voting with. Figured if it was on a different day, it might throw people off a little bit.
Council Farrell?
My only concern is turnout on the 18th. Given the 17th is usually a boisterous day.
You want to make sure that the polls open later so that people don't have to wake up too early hungover?
Sorry.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Does anyone want to make a motion in terms of the date, Council Labovitz?
I'll move. Accept I'm sorry?
Second.
Accept the recommendation. For the March 18th.
All right, so Council Labovitz has moved approval of 377-24 with the date of March 18th for the special election, correct?
2025.
2025. The next time we have on March 18th, that'll be the one. Okay. Any discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's 5-6. Councilor Mickley, are you here in supporting March 18th?
I support March 18th.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Back to you, Mr. Doyle. Now let's talk about the early voting hours and just to sort of set this up. And please correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably will get this wrong. We recently had a docket item filed, but we scheduled this even before we knew what the recommendations were, which is why you don't see the hours in the docket item. But the Election Commission did meet on Monday night. The Election Commission made their recommendations on Monday night, and I scheduled this meeting in this item for Wednesday, knowing that the Election Commission was going to meet on Monday, and we would at least have their recommendation in time for our meeting, though we wouldn't have had it in time for the Friday packet. So I believe, Mr. Doyle, you can tell us what the Election Commission decided on Monday night and what their recommendation is. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's correct. And with that being said, thank you again, Chairman. The Election Commission on Monday night voted 4 yeas, 0 nays in favor of setting the early voting schedule for it to be 2 days, Friday, March 7th, of course, 2025, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's our business hours. And then Saturday, March 8th, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Simply because that's the weekend hours that we use for at least since I've been here since September of 2022. Those have always been the weekend hours. And before, if just of course, I'm happy to take any and all questions, but just before any questions, I just want to run over a few statistics to show how we, why that day was chosen by the Election Commission, or recommended rather. So on the left-hand side, that percentage corresponds to the percentage of voters who utilize early in-person voting. So you'll see, the highest it was, of course, for the last election, it was quite high. Presidentials are typically are a bit of a statistical outlier as far as every category, as you can imagine. But for the most part, early voting doesn't really go any higher, or early in-person voting percentage doesn't go much higher than, or any higher than, 6.9%, and no lower than about 4.4%. So it's rather consistent. That highest being 6.9% for the September municipal primary. And for this election, the expected turnout, when I say turnout for, the 24% turnout is for voters citywide. So anyone who votes, whether it be mail in person or early in person. So we expect that to be about 24%. I gathered that data just kind of basing it off of what previous similar elections have been. Typically, local elections are around that. So we expect 24%. Expected EV turnout, 4.5%. And then if the committee does choose the 2-day option, that would be about 344 voters per day, which is much less than they were handling during the presidential. So they could. We expect that our election workers could certainly handle 344 voters a day. When you break it down by hour, it's not as much as it may seem. So that's the data. Let me go back to this slide and I'll leave it up to the committee to ask any questions. I'm happy to answer any.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Counselor Farrell.
Apparently there was no mail-in balloting for an election like this. Is that correct?
Well,
Sorry,
there's
can you repeat that, Counselor?
Is there mail-in voting for an election like this?
Yes, there will be.
What would the dates of that be? You know, when they're available? Or
So we aren't 100% sure yet. We have to, put the printing out to bid for who's going to end up printing the cards and mailing them out. We don't have an exact date of when those cards will go out, and then we won't have an exact date of when the ballots will be printed. But it would be around. We would print. We hope to send the cards as soon as we can in 2025. We don't see why we need to waste any time there. And then as far as mailing the ballots, we hope to get those out around February 20th. I'd like to give an exact date, but we just never know an exact date. But February 20th is our goal there.
And you do have on the list, the last day to request an absentee ballot is the day before the election.
okay,
Oh,
Correct.
day before.
Right? That
It's
would be the
actually I think it used to be one day, but now let's make sure I updated it. It should, March 11th. So one week before.
the last, so on the timeline you gave us, it says the 17th is the last day, an hour to apply for an absentee ballot.
Oh, you know what? I apologize. I made some updates to it, I think probably after I gave it to Jacqueline, so that one's on me. But this one on the screen is the most updated version.
Looking for the updated one. Yes, I will. Councilor Malky.
Are you going to do what I think you did this past year, where at the beginning of the year, you send something to every household and say, do you want a
I think those are the postcards we were
ballot?
talking about.
So that's gonna be the one where, and it covers the special election, the September primary, and the November election, and they can check them off all at the same time?
Correct. Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
great, because I know somebody's interested. And how do you decide how many ballots to get printed? To not run out?
Yeah, well, no, that's a good question. We look at historical data to see how many people vote. I personally always like to order, and Carol and Cassie too. We always like to order more than we need. I'm sure you guys saw the news out of Boston recently. That's something that we don't want to ever encounter. So I always order more than I think we need.
I'm not seeing other, I'm sorry, Councilor Malky, are you all set?
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay, I'm not seeing other hands. The recommendation from the Election Commission is Friday, March 7th, 8:30 to 5 p.m. and Saturday, March 8th, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Did anyone want to make a motion?
I'm going to approve those.
Councilor Malky has moved approval of as recommended of the early voting schedule as recommended by the Election Commission. Any discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? 6-0. Okay, thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee. Everyone have a good night. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Oh, no. All right, next item is item 449-24. This is from under the mayor requesting discussion of Parks, Recreation and Culture Department's Parks and Fields projects. I am pleased to welcome Commissioner Banks to begin this discussion. And begin a long night of your presence with us.
Thanks for coming in person.
Thank you for having me here. So I was gonna say thank you for having us here. I couldn't see the names from over there, but I'm joined this evening by Luis. And he'll be doing our presentation through Zoom here, Luis Perez de Marisi. You did see him there. And then, of course, Mark Welch, our Deputy Commissioner, is also on. Mark, thank you for being here for our portion of the show. And I am gonna try to drive home while I listen in for the later portion, but I'll definitely be tuned in to support Mark and hear some of the discussion here happening later. Thanks so much for welcoming us to speak. Tonight, we asked to come in because the mayor, you are city councilors, and many people in the community have really been supporting some of the improvement projects that we've been working on for our facilities, our parks, and our athletic fields. You may have seen some of this recently. I think I saw COO Jonathan Yeo on the call. And Jonathan, in his CIP presentation, you will have seen some of this information, but I wanted to give a little bit more of a detailed update and allow any questions or anything that might be on your mind, because it's been pre-summer since we've been here to kind of take a look at some of these things and progress. Our projects are very complex, and you'll see things in tonight's presentation, such as integrating stormwater management into some of our parks projects. I really would be remiss if I didn't say a big thank you to all our partners throughout the city departments. We really work with just about everyone, from DPW, who I just mentioned with the stormwater, procurement, law, public buildings, HHS, even assessing. I think Jim Shaughnessy has helped me with a couple of things as we've gone through really digging in and looking at our parks and where things are located. So just about everyone has a hand in the work that's being done here. We also have had a massive turnaround in the quality and condition of our athletic fields. And I want to thank many of our sport groups partners who've been really involved in this. Of course, our grounds maintenance team, who has been implementing, and many of the city councilors who have been attending meetings, planning, and really supporting the department in putting together this work plan. So again, just thank you to everyone. Thank you for having us here this evening. I'm going to turn it over to Luis, and Luis, I think I can speak for both of us in saying that we've been so proud to be able to work on all of these things that we think will be really impactful in our community.
Excuse me, Chair, rather than interrupt the presentation, I'm going to leave for the other. Excuse me, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to make some jokes while we sit here. Luis will catch him back. Got a great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Luis, we cannot hear you. It looks like you are unmuted.
You hear me okay now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect, thank you. Sorry about that, wrong mic was on, I guess. I thank you all, and I do want to echo Commissioner Banks' remarks. We feel, I would say, proud, but also fortunate to be working with all of you on getting all of these things done. So as you can see in the background, some of the screening soil for Burr School Fields, just a teaser ahead of the big opening later this spring in 2025 and summer in 2025. Anyhow, wanted to start off kind of giving a recap. Some of this you all have seen. Some of you have come to either ribbon cutting or groundbreaking, or it's in your neighborhood. So we want to, in the image here is a fantastic quartet of children violinists who were playing Mozart at the Livingston Cove fishing platform at Crystal Lake. So wanted to kind of highlight that as well. But really in the project's agenda, we'll go through very briefly Gap Pool, Farlow Pond, Cronin's Cove, sports courts, improvements to trails, playgrounds, off-leash areas, and other passive areas, and then get into the real meat of the athletic fields projects, which are in progress and have been for a number of years now. So to begin, just showing an interesting progression, aerial photography of the gap pool. The left is existing, middle is during demolition, and the right-hand side is August 2024 of this year. And since this photo was taken, this area has been restored back to grass. So here are some of the goals and the achievements that we were able to bring with the new pool project. Thanks again to our partners at Public Buildings. We got a really amazing splash pad. That big splash is a 40-gallon pump bucket, and a few other spray features that are part of this project. And overall, a great success in a very popular place this past summer. Farlow Pond, we underwent spring and early summer, and through very recently, actually, a restoration of the pond basin. This is a project that is a continuation of the earlier project, which replaced the old bridge for the new one that you see on your screen, and unearthed the pond that was beneath lawn for many, many decades. So the work that we did here was essentially strip all the epoxy, clear out all the joints, patch whatever concrete needed to be patched, put a backer rod and seal it, and then repainted the basin again to help against those leaks. We found that these joints were not working properly, so we had to replace them all. And then later this summer, we ended up being able to open the pond back up, and here it is in all its glory. We also have been doing some improvements to infrastructure. To the left here are these wonderful granite steps that at Cronin's Cove at Crystal Lake. Unfortunately, they have been undermined with erosion, so we ended up needing to take them out. We salvaged them at our yard for later use, and then replaced them with code compliant stairs and handrails. And then you see here on the right-hand side, riprap to help against any undermining and erosion at the edge of the stairs. And this happens on both sides. We also worked on resurfacing a few courts. On the image here is Braceland Highlands tennis and Highlands basketball. We also completed phase 2 of the Marty Sender Greenway project. It's a 600-foot boardwalk that traverses wetlands behind Lions Field at Auburndale Cove. We also, on the lower left-hand image, is an accessible pathway connection from the main trail out to the Lions Field concession stands. And then, as you see here, a multi-use boardwalk that is useful for both pedestrian, cyclists, and also winter and other multi-seasonal passive recreational activities. Remaining in Auburndale, we also added a set of swings at the Williams School playground. This was part of an MOD grant, which we very quickly received this year, and very quickly had to purchase the equipment and procure a contractor to install it. And this was done just in time for the end of school last year. We are also working over the next couple of weeks installing our newest off-leash area at Walker Park. Many of you have been involved with the Washington Street pilot, this traffic calming pilot. This dog park is in the parcel adjacent to the MBTA rail and the pike, and it is roughly half an acre of enclosed off-leash area. And the entrances will roughly align with the upcoming crosswalks that are being installed as part of the Washington Street project. We are also in the process of bidding our newest community garden space, which is due to be open by next growing season. We are projecting hopefully Memorial Day of 2025 so that there would be a full growing season in the summer. The community gardens are composed of 30 raised beds, with 3 of them being ADA compliant. This is a picture here of the ADA compliant raised bed built by an Eagle Scout. And we are getting a few more Eagle Scouts to help build a few of these, and over the winter, our staff will build these as well. And so getting to the athletic fields, which is the primary reason why we're here. As you know, over the past few years, we've been working very hard to bring up both high school fields up to 2024 standards, if you will, both in safety, technology in the turf, also replenishing and respraying the track surfacing, but most importantly, lighting these fields to help us expand field usage. Then on the upper right-hand side, you can see just the kids being super ecstatic at the ribbon cutting for the new field, and the lights in the background shining very brightly onto the field only. And the other project, as you'll see here, is at Newton North. The previous slide was Newton South. This one here is Newton North. As you can see here, lights, which we installed last year, new turf field, and resprayed track. We also, with the new turf technology, we were able to have the Tiger Face fabricated in only 2 seams, so that when thinking about turf, the least amount of seams, the least potential for failure of those seams and those lines peeling up, which is something we saw in the previous version of both of these fields. But the big issue that we found at Newton North was that there was this perennial puddle, and we identified it during play season, and really could not rip up the turf field in order to inspect what was wrong. So we ended up having to include fixing drainage system from the school that led to an infiltration trench under the field, which was clogged, and the project essentially fixed the drainage problem. We also were required to add a manhole with additional connections to the city stormwater to avoid clogging in the future. And that really set us back because some of this work occurred within asbestos-containing materials, which is underneath part of this field under a cap. And all of that happened in the summer, and we were able to have the ribbon cutting and the kids' first football game just after Labor Day this year. And then, as Commissioner Banks had noted earlier, our fields have never looked better, thanks to, again, our athletic partners and our maintenance division. Upper right-hand corner, you can see the quality of the irrigated grass field, and going through the IPM program, it's really the best possible grass turf for playing sports. And on the screen here, you'll see Weeks Field, Brown Oak Hill, and Nahen. Just beautiful fields on a beautiful fall day. And the big one right now for you all that may be traversing through Auburndale and you see the massive piles of soil is the Burr School Fields. This is leveling out approximately 5 acres of athletic field space. And it is bound by a perimeter path and some no-mow wildlife meadow areas where the school children are not to play, sort of on the ancillary border areas. This project also has a few rain gardens and swales for drainage. But the biggest component of this project is earthwork, as you see in this image here. And there are various levels of earthwork. There's the subgrade, which is more structural, has more rocks. And then there is the loam, which will take up between 8 and 12 inches of the top layer of the field. And that's where the grass will grow, and that's where the part of the irrigation will be. And so the contractor, I should say, needed to screen and remove organics and big rocks, really create this fine topsoil, and reused. Much of this soil was on site, and in this area here, that was exported from down the street from our big pile at Crescent Street. And then here's an image of what it will look like. Over here, some swales between the field and the pathways, another swale here, a larger sort of rain garden and swale over here, all with the goal of capturing and treating stormwater on site to the greatest extent possible. Then along the loop, we'll have bike racks, picnic tables, and benches, as well as plenty of trees. We are maintaining the trees that are there now, shifting a few and adding tons more. Another project that we have, this is still in planning and is expected to go under construction in the summer of 2025, is McGrath. This includes pretty substantial stormwater infiltration basin, collecting stormwater from Myrtle Street, thanks to our partners in DPW and you all for approving stormwater funds to go toward this. We will also be working with the Lacrosse Youth League for a lacrosse practice wall, and have worked with the COD to secure CDBG funding for a perimeter path. We have started part of this plan by removing the backstops that were aging and failing, and really starting to set up the project for this larger improvement. Our I would say marquee or flagship athletic field project is at Russ Halloran Sports and Recreation Complex, also known as Albemarle. On the screen here is phase 1, which includes pedestrian pathways, lots of trees, 6 pickleball courts, basketball court, renovated softball field, repositioned baseball field, and a new turf field, all of which are lighted. The pedestrian network of pathways will also be lighted for safety and just in general connectivity during the darker times of the day. We will also be including a big swath of the Cheesecake Brook in these improvements, and including sediment control measures for the runoff from the road, and renaturalizing a lot of the banks of the slope. As you'll see in this slide here, we are also from our partners at the Charles River Watershed Association and DPW, we have been able to secure funding to implement a pretty substantial subsurface infiltration chamber underneath the new turf field, which will take runoff from the Crab Street drain, allow it to infiltrate, and any additional overflow during extremely large storms will then outflow back into the storm drain. And as you see here, sort of a rough rendering of what the intent is along the Cheesecake Brook. Again, replacing those asphalt swales that are currently there with sediment control structures and lots of vegetation and areas for wildlife. In terms of schedule, we opened the bids, excuse me. last week, we got very competitive bids, a total of 7. And we will be awarding the lowest bidder. So we will be moving forward with this project. And we do expect construction to begin sometime in February, between March and, more realistically, weather dependent as well. We are looking at March 2025 to start construction. This will be phased or sequenced in a way that certain amenities will go online first, really working with Day Middle School and Newton North on ways in which we can minimize impacts to their PE activities, as well as upcoming season. We are also working with them in our maintenance division to irrigate or connect the irrigation on the south side of Albemarle, that we can improve the quality of the field in this area. And we'll also be working with Little League and softball to fully skin what's known as Roche Field. Actually, this is not a good, right here, this is a better plan. Roche Field here, fully skinning it so that it serves for softball and Little League. So our goal is really to try to not display too many Day Middle School activities, as well as sports leagues. And we'll be sharing some of these outfield spaces with them as well. And with that, these are sort of the list of athletic field improvements that we've been doing over the past number of years, since 2020. You know, one larger project that we'll be coming to you all with is Bobby Braceland and some additional athletic fields to improve, looking ahead the next cycle of improvement. And with that, I leave the picture of Sweet Adeline. She is our line painting robot, which our staff love. GPS, it can be controlled through a tablet. It is geo-referenced, and it is also very easy to paint the proper lines with the proper safety zones. And really right angles at the corner kicks and such. So really great addition to our team. And with that, I will hand it over to the committee for any thoughts, questions, comments, and apologies for the lengthy presentation here.
Can I ask, would you pull the presentation up for one more moment, and could we go back to the grass fields this fall? I just want to turn everybody's attention for 1 minute. We recently met with youth soccer and girls soccer, and they commented that the grass fields are in the best condition that they've ever seen them. These are actually pictures from this fall. You know, you can see how they are using the complexes to have multiple games out on each site, a lot of sport traffic on these fields, and it is holding up. It is amazing that they're in this condition. We've been in a drought period. We've had very, very little rain actually through the summer, and this fall has been the driest on record. So to have these kind of conditions really is a testament to the work we've done to fund extra treatments, aeration, fertilization, seeding, all of the things that our grounds maintenance team has been doing here, as well as the work that you saw in the artificial turf fields. We are using those evening times, the lighted fields, and putting the really heavy impacts of sport use onto those to be able to keep our grass fields in a premier condition at these sites where we're making these investments. So really pretty amazing turnaround on what we've seen here. Thanks, Luis, great presentation. And if you could take it down, it's nice to be able to see everybody up there.
All right, thank you, Commissioner, thank you, Luis. I think folks probably know, but a few years ago, I think many of us on the council were very frustrated by the state of our parks, and especially our recreation fields, and put a big emphasis on trying to get more resources pushed into those, trying to get more plans developed in terms of prioritization of the needed projects, and more work done both to rebuild many of our fields, but also to maintain them in a much better way. So I think we have grown by leaps and bounds. We have seen the city budget expanded. I've been very supportive of that. I mean, it can't go fast enough. I know there's still a lot of projects to happen, and to me, they can't happen fast enough. But I think we're in a much better place now than we were a few years ago, and so I do applaud the work of the city. I thought I saw that we were joined by Councilor Baker. If he's here, Councilor Baker, member of the committee from Ward 7, welcome. Any committee members or any councilors have any questions they would like to ask Councilor Malachi?
Okay, couple of quick ones. First, about the
Yes.
Burfield, I'm curious, you mentioned soil coming over from Crescent Street. What was the source of that soil?
The source of that soil was structural soil from various school construction projects. I believe there's some soil that came from Cabot School, from Zervis, and from Ainger.
Structural soil in the sense of what we put in tree wells, or?
No. It's more structural soil. So it's got, a mix of loam, some rocks, some gravel. It's really kind of subsurface soil. And that's what that soil that we have at Crescent Street is only being used as a subsurface. It's not appropriate for screening for topsoil. So it's really subsurface soil.
I was wondering if all sort of the, you're getting sort of compost out of it or something like that.
We're reusing native Newton soil.
Okay, so no
Yeah.
imported bugs, that's good.
Yeah.
And the trees, the recently planted trees at Burr that had to be taken up, are they reusable? Are they sort of stashed in the mulch pile somewhere, or?
Some of the trees actually did not make it between planting and construction fence going up. So we lost, I believe, 3 or 4 of them, and the ones that are moving are within a mulch pile that the contractor keeps on site watered. And then there are a few others that are not moving from their location. They're just remaining in place. So we will be replacing the trees that failed and then adding more with Mark Welch and his team planting those.
Okay. And I have several questions related to Newton North. First of all, can you explain what happened with the failure of the seams so early? And what part of the field was it? How much of the field, and what happens if it happens after the warranty period?
So the seams failed in the previous turf that was there, the old turf. After the installation, the new turf has a lot less seams. There was a seam that became separated, and it was an installation error, if you will, along the 25-yard line on the low lab side of the field. And that the contractor has on the punch list and had since fixed it. So to answer your question, if there's any seam separation that we can glue back together, our crew will do it. If it's any major seam separation or fault of the turf, for example, that is covered under warranty. If that happens after the warranty expires, we would be liable for that.
And how long is the warranty?
The warranty is 8 years on the turf field.
Oh, so it's the whole 8 years, okay.
Yeah.
And did it have anything to do with the sort of, like it was a last minute rush to finish the installation? I mean, they were kind of doing the sort of smoothing the fill the day that the ribbon cutting is happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, whenever, as you mentioned, whenever you're kind of rushing to get stuff done, someone might have missed laying down the glue properly and wasn't checked. That kind of stuff happens, especially when you're rushing. But considering the short amount of time that the crew had to install it, a 5-foot section of a seam Peeling up is a pretty okay thing in my opinion. I've seen worse failures in projects for rushing.
And going back to back in August, I sent you a bunch of questions and I never got the answers. And I was curious because it seemed like the situation with needing DEP authorization to dig into the asbestos contaminated old fill was that kind of a surprise? Did we anticipate that? Because that didn't seem to come up until after all the old artificial turf had been taken up and we otherwise would have been ready to go.
Yeah, so we knew we've known it's a as part of the school construction back in 2009 to 2010. That area was filed with DEP. We encountered this soil area when we installed the lights last year, so we knew the extent of the asbestos containing material. What we did not know was the source of the puddle that was coming up from underneath the field. And what we learned was that the school sump pump pumps water into the gravel basin under the field, and those pipes sort of terminated at the stone. So if you can imagine, 14 years of water, both from the drains, from the roof, from the sump pump, pumping water into this area and it being clogged and us not being able to get to it, then that water kind of backed up in that spot that had the puddle. So we needed to really rip all that out. And we had been waiting for DEP approval since before we broke ground, really since June, which is when we submitted the permit.
So the problem was very slow DEP approval, though you
Yeah,
asked.
exactly. That kind of set us back quite a bit. And then once we got DEP approval, it's just a matter of being careful in terms of outlining the area. Certain staff need to be trained in order to access the area. So I couldn't even get too close to that area myself. So just the logistics of that type of work within that type of soil area just really slows it down.
And is any future maintenance of the drainage pipes underneath, can that be done without disturbing the field?
Yes. So in the picture that you saw, we ended up putting a manhole with a cover that's underneath the field, and that is close enough and has pipes that are large enough for DPW's Vector truck to be able to go in and take out all the sediment and clean it out properly. The previous version of the field did not have that, and thus the clogging and the drainage issues.
Reason we wanted to show that deep hole where they were digging down is because that it's not field drainage that was causing that backup of water. It was a full water system management for the school facility.
From the roof of the high school.
All the runoff, everything from the school was being managed through there. I mean, the add-on that was for the project was that was just very, very significant. So not knowing what was under there, unearthing that, figuring out what the parts were, getting all the parts ordered, and fixing it because it wasn't previously installed correctly. It should not have been backing up all that water with nowhere to go.
And in the schools.
Right. So that was incorporated then into the project and added on to the scope. And we were able to then continue the work on. But yeah, the permits and everything, it's a tough site to work in. We had those same issues when we were there doing the lighting.
And this might be a question for you. Back during the budget resolution debate, Lenny Gentile told the city council that he was told by you, I guess, that Albemarle artificial turf was the last artificial turf. So can you confirm that there's not going to be any more artificial turf on city property?
That's all the artificial turf that the city has planned, that our department has planned for now. So, we're not bringing forward any other artificial turf fields at this time. I can't confirm that would be forever. I mean,
I think
we wouldn't know if it would be needed in the future.
I think that's right. We have nothing in the capital plan. We've not heard of anything that makes sense to us. So we've always wanted a combination of synthetic turf for the high use school and particular activities, and then great grass fields across the city. So that's really our focus now. And after the parks that Luis is working on, we're gonna look at Graceland coming up. And so, what can we do to the Graceland complex over there in Upper Falls to improve that? That'll be grass. So our focus is grass going forward, so.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear that people are happy with the quality of grass now. Beth, one more question for Luis. The news about non-recyclability of plastics not getting recycled, and all the microplastics and nanoplastics that are ending up in our various body parts only gets more and more depressing. So I continue to be interested in what happens to our old artificial turf. So you said you selected option 1 for Newton North, sending our old rolls back down to the warehouse in Pottstown, which is, as I observed, just at best a place for separating the fill. Have you had any information from APW Enterprises, Alan Waterman? What was the final disposition of the Newton North fields? Because the Newton South fields, although they initially went to Pottstown, he told us they ended up in it's like Georgia, Kansas, Ontario, Texas, Pennsylvania, various places. So do you have any written confirmation of what happened to the materials from Newton North?
You muted.
All right, thank you. We are still waiting for all the bills of lading and a few other documents that are required for Newton North. But because of the rush in the schedule, we kind of put paperwork and the request of paperwork kind of to aside for a moment. Now we're closing everything out and getting all that info. So we will have bills of lading for that. We don't have it at the moment.
Will there be bills of lading for going from Pottstown to the final destination?
I don't believe so, but I will check back with Alan Waterman. I have not reached back out to him in a while, so I'll go back to him and ask him for additional info.
I'm going to be interested to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilor Minkley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, 2 questions on separate topics. The first is on Gath Pool. Love it. It's amazing. The one point of feedback, which I'm sure you've heard, are the fees. Is there anything that can be done about the fees? They're obviously high for some residents.
So we did do a reset on our fees. What we found is that we had not increased our fees for quite a while. And we knew that going into the new pool facility. We sort of took the opportunity with the new facility to reset to more of a market rate. We did do a lot of research about surrounding towns, facilities, other places that people may be looking for an aquatics experience, and did do that reset. I think we can definitely stabilize our fees. We are closer to a break even. We do have a balance between our operating budget and our fees, but we do rely on those fees to operate the summer aquatics operations that we put together, which is both at the lake and the pool. We were able to offer some more options this year. So we had the lake pass and the pool pass were split for the very first time. So if people wanted the choice to go to one or the other, and then we did offer a combo pass that was just a slight increase over one site or the other. I would say that one thing that we found this summer is that our day passes were really well received. And for those that wanted to, experience the pool or the lake, maybe go 5 to 10 times. I think they looked to rely on that day pass offering versus the season pass, which was really a good fit for those who maybe were on swim team and were there every single day, or taking swim lessons during multiple sessions. So We tried to offer quite a few choices for individuals and families. The other thing that we did was we beefed up our scholarship program. We did have an increase in our scholarship participants for the aquatics program this summer. We were happy to see that. We were happy to support it. And we were able to support it in full. So those who qualified for financial need were new residents were able to be accommodated by the city.
That's really good to hear about the financial aid. I actually wasn't aware of that, so that's definitely something I will push people to in the future. And the specific feedback was on the seasonal fees, not the day passes. So yeah.
It's, payback, if you will, of how many visits you had to go, what did end up being a bit higher. And, we saw a little bit more in the day passes. We did talk about that. I'm open to feedback on it, but we thought that kind of provided a choice for people, if they knew they were only going to, maybe come in when they had family visiting and come and have a fun time. You've got the splash pad now. That was a choice. And then of course we have, some guests who are there really every single day and our regulars, and the season pass really is a benefit and pays off for them. So just having those options. One other thing that we're trying to work on for the fees at both of our aquatics facilities is to have cashless payment system. So like Apple Pay, a system where a lot of people are coming and they don't have, they may be young and don't have a credit card or just don't have cash on them. So I think that'll be a nice improvement in service for people.
Great. And then a question on another topic, although Councilor Lebovitz might have a follow-up on this topic. I'm not sure. I saw my hand go up.
Councilor Lebovitz, can I ask you to follow? Councilor Maycliffe, if you're deferring for a moment, I'll go to Councilor Lebovitz and make a back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scholarship, how does that work? Is that a self-scholarship?
There's a scholarship form, so it's a one-page form. It's on our website. It's available at the pool and at the lake. Basically provide financial information, have to qualify based on financial need. Once that is met, then we can do registration. The pool pass this year was full compensation for the pass. So it's a great program.
Because of hindrance, to have to, we're talking about what is the fee? The seasonal fee?
The season pass, I don't remember off the top of my head what it is. It may be around a couple $100. Do you mean is it a hindrance to apply for it?
Yes, people sometimes are reluctant to be financial. They're embarrassed.
Yeah, I think we have really strong numbers in those that applied and were awarded the scholarship. So I don't think that's been a hindrance. We do try to, make it available in multiple different ways. You can do it electronically, send it in by email. You can do it in person. We can help people in the office. We try to make that as easy as possible. There's really no differentiation, once it's reviewed by our management staff, that it just goes into the system as a regular pass. It's a pretty simple form, and it really just is, we do need to collect the financial information just to qualify them. And they do have to be a new resident.
Right, back to you, Councilor Maycliffe.
Great, thanks. And another unrelated question, but something that I think Councilor Lebovitz will also be interested in is the Crystal Lake Bathhouse. You can't go there without seeing Councilor Lebovitz over the summer. He's a regular at the Crystal Lake shorefront there. But yeah, that to me is just such a missed opportunity in terms of the condition it's in, what it could be for the city, how it could just be used as a great space to gather during the summer. What can we do to better prioritize that, to get addressed, fixed, renovated as soon as possible? What can we not fund? What can we fund to make that happen?
Yes.
Councilor Mickley, you're in the wrong meeting. Commissioner Morse was just in public facilities explaining the exterior improvements that are underway right now at the bathhouse. So last year or the year before, we made a bunch of interior improvements, improving the bathrooms in particular, because that is really the only purpose of the bathhouse, essentially, is to go and use the bathrooms. So we made improvements to the bathrooms. We're making exterior improvements. We also added some security cameras because some kids unfortunately were damaging the property on a repeated basis. So cameras do a wonderful thing in terms of calming that activity. So we are making a bunch of improvements, and Commissioner, you may want to explain sort of the long-term game plan for, our focus right now is really on the most important part of the park and the beach, and that is the outdoors part. The indoors part is where people only spend less than 1% of their time. So Commissioner, you may want to just sort of explain where we are with that.
Yeah, thank you. So Crystal Lake is such a beautiful place, such a gem. We really want to build off of that outdoor space, recreation space, how people utilize the space, and also how we're protecting the environment and the shoreline and making it a long-term benefit for everyone. So drawing from Livingston Cove, the improvements that were made there, we would want to connect into the park space and what we call left beach and the main beach. Those areas do need some improvements, and we have started a community process, but we'll need to re-pick up the community process to kind of reimagine, think about how that space might help us utilize that for our recreation opportunities. There's a lot of good things that need to be looked at there. Boating, where to launch boats, and the swimming and just enjoyment of the park in general were all really high on the list. For our swimming program, for our camps, having that space, that beach area, the access into the water is very important there. And this is our lifeguarded beach area. So for safety, teaching swim, and having, families and maybe young ones, up through adults who want to have that lifeguard experience there with them. So I think really making that outside area better able to accommodate and welcome people. We've started some smaller accessibility improvements. So continuing with that as a goal will be very important. We really want to focus on this phase, get that accomplished, and then down the line, changes to the bathhouse. As Jonathan said, the bathhouse is really kind of a go through it, get changed, utilize the facilities, and get outside and really experience the nature and beauty and recreation opportunities there. So that's sort of the idea. We haven't decided yet exactly when we'll be able to re-pick up those community meetings. But we have been in close contact with our ward counselors. They've been engaging with some of our stakeholder groups. So we're excited to continue working on the improvements there.
Yeah, it's good to hear across the board. I guess on the bathhouse, I actually would disagree about its potential use. Obviously the bathrooms are important, and that is probably the most important thing to address, but I think there's a lot more potential in terms of what it could be, whether that's, an ice cream stand or a place for people to grab coffee or something, or some sort of commercial space that could even be introduced there. I don't know if you've thought about that. I don't know if other neighbors or residents have thought about that, but that's something I've heard from others when, I've gone visiting with others about how that could be sort of a vibrant area for people to gather and even buy something. Because it is a lot of space there, and I think it could be used for more than just a bathroom. So is that something that you've considered at all, using it for something more than just a walkthrough and bathroom?
So I think we'll definitely have to get input when we get to sort of what I would call the third phase of the project. So, Livingston Cove, then working on the beach and the park space, and then moving on to the building and the parking. The building's really large, so I've heard a lot of, there might be better opportunities. Some of what I've heard, though, has been more around expanding the outdoor space. So the beach and sort of area for people to be outside feels small. Can we expand that? Can the parking area be redeveloped? So I think there's going to be a mix of input and wants there. I think the reason that we really want to focus on the park and the beach first is just because we do have significant need there. The condition of it is something that we just feel like that's the first approach to bring it up to a better condition. It'll take some time to collect everybody's input on it. It'll be a big project.
All right, thanks for the update.
Thank you. I don't, if you do sell coffee there, you might also need to expand the bathhouse. Counselor Maliki.
The splash pad at Danpool, is that free? Or do you need a?
It is both, so it is a flexible, changeable facility. So that is designed that we will be able to open the splash pad earlier in the season. Before we have lifeguards and before we open up the pool. So, you know, around Memorial Day timeline, we'll be able to open that up. It will be free and open, and available on the park side. We have the field house, located right next to there, so there'll be facilities and, you know, great experience within the park utilizing that facility. In the season, we have both options. So in the mornings, and weekend time, there is free and open access, again, utilizing that park side entrance. And then during the day, after we finish our morning swim lesson, so around 1 o'clock, we connect it to the pool so that those, pool guests can have both the pool and the splash pad together, and their little ones don't have to go out of the facility and around to the park side. It connects to the pool deck.
Okay, so at that point, you would need a pass to get
At that
into
point, you need the
splash
pass,
park
yeah.
Because.
So, yeah, so like that 1 to 7 timeframe when the core pool hours are happening, it's connected to the pool facility and part of that experience, but then has that flexibility
And
to
you
do
could
both.
also, this year, did we leave it open, splash pad open after the closing season?
We did.
And this year, this year the pool opened a little late because of Bill.
Yeah.
Is it gonna open a little earlier?
It'll open more on schedule. So there's a few things that happened. The pool was under construction, and school went very late this year. So we actually, the way it lined up was quite similar to what it would normally be. Where we had a little bit of our preseason, where we have those shorter days. A lot of our lifeguards go to school, so they would do their school day and then come over. And then we opened for the full season, kind of like right back to back with that. So next year, the season will be more what we would typically see.
Sort of get more for their money if they buy this pass.
They will, yeah. So it's kind of mid-June is around when we'll be opening. And we do those preseason hours sort of after school into the evening and then start the full schedule.
And on Crystal Lake, I agree with Councilor Minkley that the bathhouse could be more than bathrooms. I mean, I don't take my little clothes and stuff outside, I leave them behind the counter, and be honest, they're just some cubbies, even if they aren't lockers, something like that. And I remember at least once going to a meeting about maybe the future of like bathhouse in the bathhouse, the community meeting, and I understand that NPD is kind of temporarily using it.
No,
I
they will
think
not
that's
be, no,
changed.
It's
Yeah.
not happening.
not happening. They're going elsewhere.
Okay, great, but yeah, I think it has a nice little feeling to it if we're going to do that.
I agree. Better utilization of the space. Yeah, I think
Okay.
we'll hear a lot of good ideas.
All right, I'm not seeing other hands, so that might transition us nicely into our discussion for next item. But before we leave that, can I get maybe a motion for no action necessary on this?
So moved.
4924, Councilor Labovitz has moved no action necessary. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, okay, thank you. Next item is item 373-24. This is requesting a discussion with Parks, Recreation and Culture about restroom facilities at city fields. Just to sort of quickly introduce this, I heard from some folks. Some, I would say, general frustration about the availability of restroom facilities at the field we have at our recreation field. Especially compared to some other communities and some surrounding communities where folks were attending recreation events, recognize that people need to use the facilities, especially if they're with Councilor Minkley drinking coffee all day, that there are needs that need to be met, shall we say. Quote that was sent to me was, when you gotta go, you gotta go. And they were sort of frustrated by hearing that, oh, go in the woods or, just go over here, or things like that. Like I said, sort of a general frustration about the availability of restroom facilities at our fields. With that in mind, I inquired with Commissioner Banks, who agreed to come and talk about that. And I'm hoping to some extent what we have, what we don't have, and what it would take to do more.
Thank you for the question. We already foreshadowed a little bit of bathroom talk, so it's definitely an important topic, something that we all rely on, and I think, we don't really need to. I think we probably all agree on the benefits of having restroom facilities. I did go through your docket item. It did seem to be related to the athletic field, so I thought I'd come here tonight and just see, what are you hearing? I mean, I receive emails from time to time of, I went to the playground and my 3-year-old didn't have a, location to go to the restroom. Sort of that balance of how many facilities we have throughout the city and where you provide them. So I did want to see, are you hearing mostly related to athletic fields? I mentioned I recently met with our soccer groups, who are one of our largest athletic field stakeholders. They work very closely with us to place portable units. So I do have an inventory that I pulled of which fields that we do have portable toilets at. Right now, the way we do that is we work with our sport groups. They sort of have control of that, if you will. So they determine where do they have their centralized locations, where are they playing a lot of games or having a lot of use, and they put those units out when they're in season and when those facilities are being used. Their field schedulers felt that program worked pretty well for them because they liked being able to control the fees, know that it was going to be at the locations where they were most needed for those organized sport uses. When I put the list together, I saw we do have about, I'm going to say 20 to 25 locations where portable units are out at fields. A lot of them have more than one unit at the site because they are sort of those centralized complexes, if you will. So think about like Browno, Forte, Albemarle is a little different because we have the field house, but there are portable units there too. But a lot of activity going on. So some of these have multiple portable toilets in them.
And those ones you're talking about, ones that the youth or the organizations themselves,
The organizations place them.
they
yes.
place them, they get permission from you to
They
place
get
them,
permission from us.
and then they oversee and maintain them as well.
So they pay for the cleanings. They sort of make their own decisions on how many cleanings. If we get a report, we would be in touch with those who have them scheduled, and we would say, we get an extra cleaning or something like that. But we don't get a lot of complaints about that program. And I think because they are at those very active sites, people recognize that the portables are important. We do get the flip side on portable toilets as well, which is people don't like to look at them. They have to be placed along accessible pathways where the truck can get to them to clean them. They can have an odor to them, especially if the cleaning, isn't at the right interval. So kind of a mix, but for the most part, that is how we're managing most of the units. The soccer group, I didn't interview everybody getting ready, and I do appreciate the extra time you gave me to prepare because, kind of getting that inventory together. I still think there's a few outstanding ones, like Little League hadn't got back to us yet, and I know for sure they have some units out there that aren't on this list, so.
So of the say 25 fields, how many are without facilities?
So which fields don't have facility? I mean, I think more our like elementary school fields, more of our like recess, smaller outdoor play spaces wouldn't have them because they're not the sites that are really being high. They might have like a small field laid out on them or like T-ball or something, but for the most part, those don't have portable units. And I don't know how the schools would feel about having that there, and we have to have that conversation with them as well. Can I just add one more thing about portable units? So we do have one portable unit that the City Parks Rec and Culture puts out, and that is a new one that we just began the program on. It is at Crystal Lake. It's right next to the bathhouse. We did take on the budgeting for that this year. Last year, it was a pilot program that we did with the Friends of Crystal Lake. They felt like it was important. We agreed with them because it is something where people are going into the water, and really felt like we needed to have that. So there was a good facility for people who wanted to be swimming. They financed it, and yeah, they financed it last year. We took it over this year. We put it out early spring, and it goes through fall-ish. I think we removed it around October 1st. So we budgeted for that with our program swim fees and covered the cost of that, but it is a longer season than what we're open for at the bathhouse and operating throughout the season. But that was really one that was brought forward that we felt like was very important to add and find a way to fund it. So that's actually the only portable toilet that the department is managing.
Okay, I'm gonna come to Councilor Alvin 1 second. So did you look into if the city were to sort of take charge and make sure that there were
Yep.
a porta potty or 2 porta or whatever, at all the fields, what would that entail? What would be
So-
a commitment from the city?
Yeah, so I think for portable toilets, financially speaking, I'm just gonna estimate about 50 sites. I don't know. We have to talk about, is it playgrounds, is it parks, is it trails, or is it really just the athletic fields? I know Doc was great for athletic fields. Like,
Yeah.
I get questions about all of them, so, I guess how far would we take it would be something that would need to be considered. So to put portable units out at 50 sites, for 9 months, so I would recommend that we bring those in the winter, so we don't have to get into antifreeze and that kind of thing, about 300,000 budget to be able to do that. That certainly wouldn't cover all of our sites, all of our playgrounds, that would just be really focusing on the fields. I think, depending on the location, we have to really work on what the frequency of the cleanings be. I don't think they come with 1 a week cleanings for that pricing, and I think we probably have to add on more cleanings at high frequency sites. So for example, the Crystal Lake unit during the high season was getting cleaned 5 times a week. So substantial need there. I mentioned the can cause odor issues. These are mostly challenges. Again, I think we all understand the benefits of being able to have it there, but what would it mean for us to have a program like this? The aesthetics of it, again, people don't always want to be looking at that. So I'll use the example of Crystal Lake. We were able to work with the neighbors, work with our stakeholder groups, find a good location. But I don't think people would have been as supportive to put a unit over in either of the coves. I think it really needed to be near the bathhouse, in an area where we could, not have a visibility issue. They can be vandalized, so when you are renting these units, we are responsible for any vandalism. So if they get tipped, we've had them be set on fire. All kinds of crazy things happen with these units. I mentioned that they must be placed along an accessible route, and also where the vehicles need to get to them. So just thinking about, depending on our locations, is there really a good site match for it would be important. And then, just having vendor vehicles in and out of all of these sites, and thinking through safety issues or anything with trucks and transportation, I would recommend we think about that. So yeah, that's kind of the highlights for portables.
Councilor Oliver.
Okay, thank you. My apologies for being tardy.
Heard there's a few meetings going on, so.
There is a couple of things, yeah, a couple of things to shake a stick at, that's for sure. So I hadn't really thought or focused my attention on this particular item until I saw it on the docket. Started to make a few phone calls on my own, talked to some folks, soccer groups, football, some of the teams that played over at North, South. I'm gonna say most of them were actually talking about North. And the frustration that I hear from the booster group, from some of the groups that play at North, are really focused on, oftentimes they're told, oh, you'll have access to the building. Oh, okay, great. And then they show up and the doors are all locked. Now, I know just enough to know that, hey, maybe there wasn't somebody staffing the building that day. It is all OT over the weekend and so on and so forth. So I get it. Then I talked to a friend of mine who ran one of the programs. He's like, yes, the city asked us to put a porta potty, or suggested that we put a porta potty at Newton North, down towards one end of the track. And then we paid for it. So they did. But what was happening is exactly what you just described. It was being vandalized, right? While they weren't even using the field. They used that field twice a week, right, for a couple of hours. I'm not sure how many games they have on Saturdays. I'm sorry, Sundays. But what was really interesting to me is they then started to lock the porta potty, because you can, apparently put a padlock up. Who knew? So then some of the other programs were mad at these guys for locking the porta potty. Because someone at the city level said, oh, hey, so-and-so's got a porta potty there, just use that. Yeah, no. So like, and I don't know what the solve is. I don't know. But it does seem to me, and I was really shocked, $300,000 for 6 grand per unit for 6 months. I mean, that's like back of napkin math. That sounds like a lot to me. But anyway, I get it. I think it's worth solving for. And again, and this is one thing that anyone who's paid attention to me, and I can understand why you wouldn't, but I'm glad that drew some sort of laughter. I hope David was laughing at that too, just a little bit. Yeah, okay, no, it's fine. But
I don't appreciate humor in this committee, but thank you. Go ahead.
Anything I can try and do, I know you're in charge of that whole part of the scheme. But really, what I think is even more important for us to try and figure out is not just what the cost is, but, and I heard Chair Cranston mention this, what would it take to get it done? Just from there's a cost perspective, there's options, like, I want to hear this city get much more into the problem definition phase of things, and then throw out the ideation for solves. There's got to be something. Every other city and town that I've ever taken a football team to, that I've ever played soccer at, that I've had my kids playing baseball at, they figured it out. There are porta potties everywhere. So we can do it. What I'm hoping we can do is take that next step, and I'm not saying solve it, I don't know what the solve is, but I do know that we are capable of finding.
So I'll say a couple of things, because the north toilet did become a bit of an issue. And so 2 years ago, I want to say, the athletic department budgets had a cut to them, and they have since been revived. But at that time, the schools, both high schools, cut back the portable units that they were providing. So it did cause a ripple effect then with the other groups who were utilizing those sites to have to step in and cover those ones. So I think we have a position in our department that does all the field scheduling, and I think having us
Really
be.
glad you said field scheduling and not porta potty designation.
Yeah,
That's
well,
really-
I mean, and I would say, I mean, I have in my notes, thinking about the management of taking over all of the placement, invoicing, payments, that would be a really large management piece for our department to take on. Depending on how many sites, but even if it was, say, 30 sites or around what we have right now, 25 to 30 sites, that would be a lot to manage. So we do appreciate, working with the sport groups who are able to provide some of that management structure through, their volunteer services, basically. I think that when I looked at the list, and I'm happy to share the list of what we have right now. I think as a part of our permit process, we do have these conversations. We work with the groups, but I think bringing the groups together to have a conversation about, is everybody participating and putting out some portable units so that there's a shared cost? We do have a lot of groups that work together, so they know they're at this field, the other one's at the other. When I went through the list, I was looking for that because I knew the north and the south toilets went away. They have come back since, but south came back through the school providing it. North, another group, as you mentioned, provided it at the high school, but north has actually, the high school has picked up 2 other units at other field locations that the North High School also uses. So I think it was like Cold Springs and McGrath maybe or something, but you know what I mean? It was like you see a little bit of this group is putting these 2 out while this group is doing the other ones.
But again, like, if the North athletic programs are taken care of, or, you know, putting some of these porta potties at McGrath or Weeks or other places, okay, that's great. But that's not where they, like, I'm talking at building, at the facility, at the turf
Yes,
field,
at
and
the
that's where
campus,
people
right.
are, I mean, let's face it, when, you know, Concord Carlisle or Brookline or any other team, like, buses their students, their entire team, right? Right, sometimes from 45 minutes plus away, have the game, they got another 45-minute ride home. There's nowhere to go.
I'm happy to have
Literally.
that conversation to talk to the high school athletic directors about making sure, especially the ones on campus are provided by the schools. You know, I think that's, they have traditionally provided a couple of units within this overall plan. And so having them do one at the school campuses versus it looks like North just provided 2 other ones this year. But I think we can go back to what was the previous approach, where the school put them out at the high school
I think that'll
complexes.
be important. That'll, if nothing else, that demonstrates that we're getting it, we're on it,
Yeah,
even if there might be, you know, more room to grow in that direction.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Councilor Oliver.
thank you.
You. Councilor Humphrey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So perhaps this question was implicitly answered earlier in that it's a function of when the athletic season is there, but I have received some strong questioning recently from a Ward 5 constituent, also known as my mother, about the facilities or lack thereof at Cold Spring Park. Sometimes there's porta potties, sometimes there's not. Right now, there's not. I was wondering if you could clarify on that specific location.
yeah, Cold Spring is on the list, but again, it is related to the athletics, so we do see that these are put out seasonally. So spring season being March through June, fall season being August through November. That's mainly when the units are out, and they are traditionally posted close to the fields. So that's why you're seeing it sometimes be there and sometimes not. Yeah, summer's really kind of slow for the sports. So really, unless it's like at the high schools or Albemarle, there's not a lot of units out during the summer.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Great, thank you, Councilor Humphrey. Councilor Malachi?
I was curious, the city porta potty at Crystal Lake, so is that outside the fence? So is that usable for all the, I was actually kind of gobsmacked by the line of people swimming what used to be illegally, and I'm sure NPD is really happy they don't have to arrest those people anymore, but so many people, so they know.
Yeah,
that
it is for
there's-
outside of the season, so and during the season when we're closed,
Right.
so anytime that the bathhouse isn't open, yeah, and it is serving that need for, you know, those who are swimming have a place to go and don't need to go in the water. We kind of want to
And
not have
is-
that happen.
maybe it's a crazy thing and it's not possible, but does anyone use kind of like composting toilets like you have, you know, if you live off the grid or camps or something where they don't have to clean, they just. kind of-
Yeah, we did pull some costs on like other types of facilities. I don't think I have costs together for the composting toilets, but you know, Josh Morris gave us some preliminary information on, you know, buildings and the costs associated, and it's significant, and I think those composting ones would be similar as well, just because you've got, you know, a building, you've got to
So they need a building.
figure out how to
Yeah,
open it, close
it's a
it,
building.
clean it,
I think Clivis Multrum may still be in business. I used one in Ecology House in college where I lived for a year. We had to feed it every week and take care of it, which was always interesting, but it's a building, it's a fair amount of investment. There's an odor too, and then there's maintenance, so it's not as easy to, these darn porta toilets are really the answer.
I just want to quickly say that we've been joined in person now by Councilor Baker and Councilor Greenberg, and I believe Councilor Block has joined us online. All right, I don't see other hands up. My request here, or my suggestion, is going to be hold, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to ask Commissioner Banks if you would be willing. I didn't ask this before, so you don't necessarily have to answer now. If you would be willing to look into a pilot program and what the parameters of that might be, what might be doable, what we might be able to do. And I would suggest, you know, a variety of types of fields, a variety of types of locations, and types of funding sources. If the city were to sort of partner with some of these leagues, maybe centralize administration of these facilities and look at that. If we could, I understand that it's overwhelming, you know, $300,000, 50 locations, possibly more, but can we start to tackle this by looking at a way to maybe pilot something, see what we can learn from that? As part of that, maybe do our research and look at what other communities are doing and see if we can maybe start towards the path of the solution.
Is your vision for that request focusing on the athletic fields? So basically, we've got the program with these sport groups for some athletic fields, but
Right.
what athletic fields don't have them? Is the fields what is, you know, the important?
No, unfortunately, I think there's a more particular solution for the recreational fields, which probably includes the leagues. But I don't want to forget about Councilor Humphrey's mom, who might not be content if we're just focusing on the recreation. So again, maybe it's doable, maybe it's not, maybe some are doable, maybe some are not, but I think we should look at ways to accommodate our residents in all of the facilities that we try to make available for their use.
I think the discussion would become around funding because either we're working within a structure where we have a fee structure that we can pass along. So, you know, so the athletics, the fee structure is right now that the groups are doing it on their own, but if we were to provide something else in-house, we'd have to charge that within our permit fees. The Crystal Lake one, we were able to do through the aquatics fees. When we get into a playground, a trail, a general park, we have no fee-based revenue source. So then we need to think about budgeting for that.
I think those are appropriate considerations. Councilor Humphrey?
Well, to build on your point, Mr. Chairman, I think potentially something to think about. I don't even know if it's a pilot per se at this stage, but just thinking about where are the lower hanging fruit options. You know, there may be certain types of parks or, you know, facilities that are have a greater need than others, or it would be easier to do than others at a lower cost. You know, like the situation probably varies by location. And I know that always brings up some concerns around equity and things like that. But like, I think to Chairman Krinsman's point, some of them are, you know, probably fairly low use or it's concentrated use. Some of them are being used all the time, all year round. Some of them you're very far from anything. Some of them you're right next to a building that has a bathroom. So obviously, $300,000 is a very daunting figure if we are talking about all of them, but it may be that some of them are more doable than others at a fairly marginal increase in costs. I mean, it would have to be budgeted for. I understand that. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but like that some of them might be doable if you were to think strategically about, you know, what's our next opportunity, that kind of thing.
I think that's right, Councilor Humphrey, and that's why I said pilot program, because I'm thinking we could sort of sample some of the locations that might be more heavily used, might be less heavily used, see what kind of value we can get for putting facilities there. Understanding, I tried to avoid it, but that there are parts of the city where people are more foolish than others. And, you know, parts of the city where people get pissier than others, but,
I
you know.
knew the
we have to
potty
accommodate.
humor was coming.
It's all fair. So, with that in mind, thank you. I would ask for maybe a motion to hold.
So moved.
Counselor Oliver has moved to hold. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Are we at 8? We all there?
That's so.
Counselor Farrell. Oh, Counselor Farrell left. Right. Okay. 7-0 hold. Thank you. Item 404-24. Requesting a discussion on resolution of field use regulations at Newton South High School. Counselor Farrell and Lobovitz have docketed this, but I think Counselor Oliver is also going to speak to it. Maybe Counselor Lobovitz, do you want to start and tell us why you,
Well,
or whoever?
I co-docketed because it was important to South City. Farrell, I haven't been directly involved in this, so normally he would speak to like Council Oliver is
So I guess I'm.
Counselor Oliver.
All right, so here we go. Thank you, Chair. So I first kind of got involved with this and I actually, I see that the agreement that was put together was referenced in the item, but it's not attached to the packet. I have it because I kept it from way back when, but because it's not in there, just for everyone kind of watching or listening and not waiting on the tree item, really well, there was an agreement that was drafted, and I promise I'm going to, I know it's at the end of the agenda, but there was an agreement that was drafted somewhere between, correct me if I go astray, Neighbors, Athletic Director at South, and Parks and Rec.
So, this is a good opportunity. Actually, I don't think I've presented on this here. We have some new counselors. The history of the agreement, which isn't necessarily an agreement. It's not a signed document. It's not, because it's with a group of neighbors, basically, who's not, you know, they're not an organized group. So the way that this came about is the South High School added a light system to the stadium. It was the first light system at the stadium.
Wasn't this in 2020? But that's when it was dated. So it was
Yeah.
well before Brandeis.
No, it was the stadium.
Okay.
So the first
Well,
light
the
system that
2020
went in.
was stadium.
Yep.
And then later we added lights to Brandeis.
So we had a group who fundraised for the lights
Yes.
at the South Stadium field. So the group consisted of soccer and boosters, high school boosters. They raised the funds. They were very interested in activating the stadium, you know, bringing in fun evening, night football games, all those kind of things that high schools want to do. As part of that, there was a group of neighbors who wanted to discuss the extension of the use. So basically, games happening in the evening, traffic, things that came along with the additional use. And the agreement was formed between the school and the neighbors. So basically they said, yep, this is important. You hear us, we want to add lights, we want to have all these activities, we hear you. We're open to putting some parameters around how we're going to utilize the light system. And the other thing that was in this was the PA system. There was a pretty bad PA system that was very loud. The boosters group committed to do some more fundraising, and they've actually very quickly fundraised and have replaced that system. They did the research, upgraded the quality of it, and have since put in a new system. And yeah, we've been following along with this agreement. You know, it's got parameters about time for the lights to be off at night. The school uses the PA system. No other groups use the PA system. all of those things. So, and I'm happy to share the
So-
document so that if everybody does want to see it.
So. Yeah, I mean, if you wouldn't, if you've got a couple of copies, I'd love for people to kind of be
So
able
I
to.
didn't do
bump along.
copies. The hybrid meetings are hard
Yes,
because
they are.
like, I feel like it's not fair to those who are
Sure.
out in our Zoom world, but I'm happy, I can send it to Jacqueline after and
Yeah.
I'll post it with the packet or something,
Oh,
or
sure.
distribute it out, okay. That'd be great.
Right.
I think, Commissioner, I think it's fair to say it only pertains to the stadium.
It does, it's
not-
about the
not
stadium and the
Brandeis
lights, yeah.
field.
I don't know if anyone has a map. The folks know which is the stadium
Yeah.
field, which is the Brandeis Road field. The folks know what fields we're talking about. The stadium field is where the football team plays, where there's
With the track
sand,
around
the
it.
track around it,
Yeah,
Track.
adjacent to the
stands,
brown.
full- it's the
open
primary.
field. The Brandeis Road field is now, if I'm not mistaken, actually on
Lion
Lion Drive.
yes.
Right.
And it is, should be called Lion Drive Field, but
Yes,
but
yeah.
but it is that field that is one end of it is adjacent to Lion Drive with residences on one side and high school facilities on the other.
So the night that I'm talking, that I'm gonna describe, because I think that's when I started to kind of really get involved with this situation going on. Several of the people here, I think you were there, I'm not sure, Jonathan, if you were there. Rick Lippoff was there, I was there, Pam Wright was there, Council Farrell, prior to his joining the council, was there.
Oh, Pam Wright has joined us. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Good.
Pam Wright has joined us. Welcome, Council Wright.
And it was we were talking about the lighting system that it was already in place. And I remember because, and I don't remember the name of the company, but it was Dark Sky. Is that who was doing the lights? Or who
No,
was
they're
going
the
to do the
reviewers.
lights?
Right, so you're right, you meet the dark sky requirements
Yeah.
with your light system
Musco is the
parameters.
name of the-
Musco is our
is the
light,
name of the
That-
firm, yeah.
That's exactly who it
Okay.
is. That's
Okay.
them. The guy reached into his pocket, pulled out the app and said, woohoo, I can control these lights over here with this app. We're gonna do the same kind of system here.
So this was, then we were adding the second light system to the Lion Drive field, so we did a demonstration. That was what
Yes,
everybody was
right,
gathered to
right.
demonstrate the
Yes.
lights and the light cutoff. These are very high quality lights, the best
Yes,
system
yes.
you can get for being
And they're
very
really good.
directional.
Yeah.
And I will also say the Lion Drive field, we went a step further. That system was specially designed because it is close to the neighbors to have 6 lights instead of 4. So they're even more directional on that
Right.
field.
So I would imagine that nobody here would be surprised to hear that the lights don't go off according to the schedule, that there's no way to actually get the lights to turn off after 9 o'clock. And that quite frequently what happens is kids will swing by and go, oh, the lights are on. I'm gonna go play soccer with my buddies and I'm gonna jam the tunes.
So
So
I can.
if I may. So that's what's going on. The neighbors, like, I've got a myriad of letters, notes, emails to yourself, to Luis, to others, to the athletic director at South. There's the agreement that was in place here, really, like, whether or not it's signed or not, you wanna call it a social contract, I'm comfortable with that. It's not signed. I know that. But there was a deal in place. There were people looking at each other as adults saying, well, if you wanna put more of these kinds of lights, that are on this field over here, help me with something. And the city said, okay. And part of what that was, and it's in black and white, you've seen it, I'm reading it. It says the lights are gonna be off at 9 o'clock unless there's a game, there'll be no amplified noise by that PA system that I think now has been replaced. And all these neighbors are looking for is that. And they're not getting it. And
So
calling NPD or someone else whose responsibility it is not to make sure that those lights are off according to these guidelines, it's kind of a big deal. Because, and I'm getting there, like, I'm trying not to get ramped up on this. Sometimes I fail. We, as a city, collectively have a responsibility to meet our commitments. This represents a commitment, and it's in writing. They went to the length of saying, hey, let's put this down on a piece of paper and make sure we all agree. Wasn't signed, I get it. What I'd like to know, my only question right now is, how do we fix this? And I don't mean phase 3, I mean now. Because this is just wrong. These people live like nanometers from these fields. They agreed to 9 o'clock, they should get 9 o'clock. Unless, I think it's unless there's a game. And there's some, what is it, 25 games a year was the number that was in here? I think. Yep, 25 lighted school games per year. And unless there's a game, lights are in use for practice or games, they are to be turned off by 9 o'clock. During games, they'll be out no later than 9. I've got ample number of photos where that's just not the case. So maybe it's a timing thing through the app. I don't know. I just want to know how and when can we fix it and do this?
My turn?
Done.
Okay. The agreement is very important. It was always important to the school. We know we have close neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. It was also very important to being able to access this expansion use because this field is so important for our school athletics, for our youth programs. The lights are important. We've talked about the turf tonight, why the turf is important, the impacts, all of that. So this is super important and we have been following this. So if you have times that the lights are on, that it's later than 9:30, please send those to me. I haven't received any emails of those.
Really?
I've checked the light data.
No email you have received.
The
no
system-
emails.
The system, oh, I've received emails, but not about it being on later than 9:30 at night.
I can fix that tonight. So, because I've got them right here.
Okay.
So I guess I'm gonna go back to my question.
Yep.
Like my understanding from the conversation we had when we were considering, right, that same app from Not Dark Sky that was gonna be replicated and then put in place for Brandeis, not Lion Drive Field. And at the time, we were talking about Albee, same thing was gonna be going on there. We've made the same kind of verbal conversation and commitments at Albee, that these things are gonna be controllable. 9 o'clock, they're off.
I don't think
No,
we've said that out loud.
We have not
I
said
was
that.
at the meeting when it was said, don't tell me I didn't hear
Oh,
it, because
okay.
I was standing.
Oh, all right.
So-
Who said that?
I believe it was either yourself,
9 o'clock,
Louise,
no,
or
we've
the
never
contractor.
agreed
It
to
might not
9
have been
o'clock.
9, I'll grant
No.
that, but the same idea, and I'm going to be the same guy, I'm gonna be the same
That's fine.
nudge.
You can.
I know, I'm good at it.
Yeah.
Let's follow what we say. And all I wanna know, when can we actually commit to doing?
The system does this. So
what it
the,
doesn't?
Can you send us examples, because we don't have it,
look,
so.
okay, so I am
If we're
aware
gonna
of
play
one
the-
night,
If we're
so.
gonna play
Alright,
the
you've gotta,
he said,
sorry,
he
yeah,
said.
we gotta go one at a
I
time.
agree.
What I'm hearing though, hang on, what I'm hearing is a desire to stick to an agreement that's out there. I think I'm also hearing a desire
We
to
have
stick
that
to an agreement
desire,
that's out there.
yes.
Perfect.
I think what we want to know to move forward is what is the process if the agreement is not being followed? And how to quickly remediate that situation.
Can I explain the one time that I'm aware of that this did happen and just give you the information, because I do stand behind the system. I think this is a very, very good light system. It's why we've tried to replicate it at every other site that we have. There was a night when the school had something happen. I don't know, transportation got messed up, suddenly a game needed to be played that wasn't pre-scheduled. The school staff person, to accommodate what was going on at the high school campus, manually set the lights to turn on and went through the app. The easiest thing for the staff person to do in the app was to do an auto turn on. So this wasn't a scheduled event. It wasn't a pre-scheduled, pre-planned thing. Then the staff person went and all the other stuff happened on campus. And there was another game over here and other stuff happening. They forgot to go back in and turn off the lights with everything that had happened. They just forgot that they had manually turned it on. So because it wasn't scheduled, It didn't have a schedule for the light time to end. What happens in that case is the system is managed with a curfew, if you will. The auto time off for when the light system will turn off. That evening, it turned off at 10 p.m., which was set for the curfew. And that was a half hour past the 9:30 agreement.
Okay, I guess the question though is, what is if that happens, because that's gonna happen,
Yeah,
right? There are gonna be times when this happens,
somebody
the lights
messed
need
up.
to be on later, or
Yeah.
someone places it down. What is the process in place to address that? If there's a concern, if something is happening, what's the process to address that fairly quickly to accommodate and get us closer to, the agreement?
I mean, we talked to the school the next day to just remind them, and it was an apology from the person. They were busy and had things happening.
But I mean, is there
But I think
someone
we
with
have a-
access
we have
to
a
the app who can be
fail-safe.
called
We have a fail safe.
at 9:45?
The athletic director, I mean, they're in charge of.
Yeah, if it's a school program, would have to go through the school.
So Councilor Oliver, that's maybe something to think about, is making sure that folks have contact information for, the person
No.
who can actually address it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and these emails were sent to multiple different people trying to find that person. And at 9:30 at night, I think it's fair to say not many people are monitoring emails. And again, I don't see that as a solve because it hasn't solved anything in the past. So what I'm doing right now is you're gonna get all the emails that have been sent. All of them. I would like to, when we're there, I wanna hold this item too, because I don't consider this to be.
Councilor Love, please.
Other than the game times, it would be 9 o'clock.
Any other questions, comments?
I think there was an issue that, Councilor Farrell wanted to raise about the addition of the gates and the fencing about the gate. That they're not in good shape and some problems with the gates.
At the stadium or?
I'm not sure which. Field he's talking about.
Would you ask him to send us an email about it or a photo or something?
Let me ask you, who's responsible for the gates and the fencing around the gates? Is it
Parks and Rec.
our car? Okay.
Thank
you.
So,
Mr. Chair, can I say one additional thing? I'm a neighbor of Newton North, and my wife and I, walk around campus pretty much every single night, and, it is just amazing to see the benefits of the lights and the new turf field. And it is amazing to watch our community use the campus, at night. And that is because of lights and oftentimes there are, kids playing, various teams playing. And sometimes it goes, I don't know, at 9:30 up to 10 o'clock. And so, I think there's an equity issue between our two high schools. They're now both the same size. It used to be that, Councilor Princeman, Newton South was the tiny school and Newton North was the big school, no longer the case. And I think it's fair to say the athletic directors think very much about equity between the two schools. So it is something to think about going forward. We have very active athletic programs, both at the schools and in the community. And we do have a lot of use. Many of us walk around the track at night. These are important campuses, and yes, there are neighbors, those of us who live around it. I will say the sound system in Newton North is not as good as the one in South, so we say replace it, but just wanted to make that pitch that we need to think about equity between our two high schools.
right, I believe Councilor Oliver has moved hold
He did.
on this item. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 7-0 hold. Thank you. We have been joined by Councilor Danberg. Are you taking off?
Yes,
Okay.
and I'm gonna log in, so Jacqueline, if you don't mind watching for my request,
Okay.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Want to know that, so
Thank you for
being here.
having me tonight,
Join us online.
I'm glad, I guess other meetings are wrapping up, but
The last item, and thank you all for staying until the end. I'm sure you would have, even if this weren't the last item. Is 378-24. This is a request for a discussion and possible amendments to the tree ordinance. Councilors Danberg, Lipoff, Kalis, and Kelly filed this. We've been joined by Councilor Danberg. Councilor Danberg, I want to give you an opportunity to tell us why you filed this item. I also want to acknowledge that, as I've done with the other items, other times we've discussed this, I'm going to give an opportunity for public comment. So if folks are interested in commenting on this, we will open it up for public comment. We do ask that you keep your comments to under 3 minutes, please, so that we can get through everybody. And anything is on the table. So having said that, Councilor Danberg.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for inviting me in to chat with you about this. First of all, I see this as a preliminary discussion on the idea of modifying tree ordinance, because I understand that in August, I believe the committee Programs and Services Committee took a vote that you would wait until a year from when the tree ordinance was voted through to make any changes. Is that still the case?
Well, let me correct. I said everything is on the table. I was talking about when people comment. People are free to comment on anything. I don't remember that we took a vote to hold it, but I think the general sense of the committee was we want to at least give this a year to see how it works before we try to make any changes. I would say that I think part of that year is to understand how it's working and hear from people about how it's working or not working. So, but yeah, I think the general consensus was we want to at least give it a full season, see if it has worked the way we wanted it to, if the implementation was as we expected, if compliance was as we expected, and if not, why not?
Okay. The reason that I docketed this item was that I got several comments from people in, well, a couple of them came from Ward 6, but from all over the city, really, when they heard that I was interested in looking into this, that they had done or wanted to do very simple projects. One was a gentleman who may be here tonight. I don't know whether we have Mr. San Roma with us tonight. But he, and will, if he's here, he will speak to it. Wanted to do a simple project where he lives on Walnut Street. His wife is no longer able to climb stairs, and they wanted this winter to be able to extend their house a little bit into the backyard. His intent was to be able to do this with the builder without touching any trees, and found that not only was there going to be a delay because it's very difficult. All of the comments that I've gotten from people have said that it's very hard to find registered tree people who are even interested in taking this this type of an assessment on. He was able, went to Bartlett and got a very high price, and finally was able to, he went to a number of tree people in the city. Most of them were not interested in taking on the project. He went back to Bartlett and it was still in the thousands of dollars. So I think.
Just to be clear, sorry, Councilmember, are you talking about the need to do a tree survey?
Yes, the
as part of the
need to
project?
survey the trees, even though no trees were gonna be touched or taken out. And so, in hearing from several people, and I think Alan Mayer is also here, he'll give the perspective of another homeowner or a group of them. As an architect, he deals with this thing on a regular basis because he's does a lot of projects in Newton. And what I would like to discuss is whether we are hurting small project folks and who reside on their properties and, who just want to do small projects that are being delayed and being, financially, causing them difficulty, in completing these projects. So I think I, would be happy to, cede to any comments that there might be out there, to hear what people have to say. And, again, the reason for bringing it is the financial hardship and the financial burden that I'm finding from people who have called me who are trying to do small projects.
Okay.
We're not talking about developers who come in. This is just homeowners who reside on their properties who want to do small projects.
Thank you, Councilor Danberg. Folks online, if you're interested in commenting, please raise your hand. I'll try and get to folks at least online in the order. Folks in the room, can you just raise your hand if you're interested in commenting on this so I can see? 1, 2. All right, why don't we try and do the people in the room first, then I'll come to everyone who's online. You were the first hand I saw. Go ahead. Again, sorry, for folks who are going to provide comment, please just give us your name and your address, if possible, so that we have it for the record.
Yeah, Jeff Denoncourt. We spoke on the phone last week. Thank you very much for talking to me. With my wife Linda, we live on 50 Tarleton Road, not far from here. We started looking into removing a couple of trees on our property, one of which is elm tree. It's a 35-inch elm tree that's about 3 feet from our garage. It's leaning over the garage, over our house, over the neighbor's house. We've talked to a few arborists. The arborists tell us that it's a matter of time before this elm tree will contract Dutch elm disease. We've looked at pruning, treating, cabling. That cost prohibitive. We want to be proactive and take it down before something falls on a garage, falls on a house, falls on a person going forward. There's also a Japanese maple that's very close to our house that same project we'd like to remove. We have a small lot, but if anybody can take a look, we must have at least 12 other trees on our lot. We're in favor of preserving trees. We like the trees we have on our lot. These are 2 problem trees. We started looking into the applications. At the same time, we're also considering a similar small project. My wife's parents are elderly. We're looking at a small addition to have some first floor living that would accommodate my in-laws, my wife's parents, and we also look at this as our retirement home that would afford us 1 floor living at some point in the future. We've started the beginning phases of investigating this addition. We don't have any plans yet. We haven't made a decision to go forward, but when we start to look at the applications, this brings into play the construction application. When I talked to Julie at the town office about this, when you look at the construction application, we don't have a lot of information that's required in an application because we don't have plans yet for our project. She advised that we just do the exempt application, but that said, if you take the trees down, it'll be on the record, A, be subject to review on the ordinance. And what I want to point out what's in the ordinance is for a 35-inch elm tree, should it be enforced, it would require for the tables in the ordinance, planting equivalent of 52 inches of the diameter. So maybe that would be a combination of 52 1-inch trees, 26 2-inch trees. Again, we have a small lot with multiple trees on a lot already. And really, when you think about it, it's just really not practical to do anything like that. The other option would be to make the payment. Per the chart, just for that 1 tree, payment would be $13,825. And again, just not something that we can afford to pay for given what we're doing today. And for me, to put that kind of burden on a single family, the homeowner, just doesn't seem practical. And I'm sure there's other people that would feel the same way. So I was happy to hear that this was being put forth to the council, and I hope that
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Dan Proskauer. We live at 240 Derby Street. Yeah, we had first of all, I very much support the ordinance as it exists today. We had a unique experience that we've gotten to live both with and without the tree ordinance at the same time. Our neighbor who lives in her house is doing a small project, which is landscaping. And for part of her project, she had properly permitted the project, which involved having a licensed arborist do a tree protection plan that covers our trees as well as hers. And part of her project was not properly permitted. And let me tell you the story. The properly permitted project with the tree protection plan had a very thoughtful and thorough plan to protect roots, the access to the trees, as she was going to be tearing up her driveway, doing some work in the back of her lot to add a patio, protecting the existing trees there. The part that was not properly permitted did not have a tree protection plan, involved putting in a fence. It went through approximately 40 trees, and she and her contractor just cut through the roots of trees that were on our property, dug holes willy-nilly with no thought for where the root systems of the trees were. And thank God that the tree protection ordinance was there, because we were able to have the project stopped, thanks to help from enforcement of the city and Mark Welch and other folks. If this ordinance weren't there, that contractor would have been doing what they do, which is they just dig up whatever they want. The roots of the trees are in the way, they cut through them with saws. And it was ridiculous. And, thank goodness for the tree ordinance. I would hate to see us meddle with this. We've never had that kind of protection before. There's no recourse without that. So we strongly, strongly support even the tree ordinance as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at the moment, I don't see anyone else in the room, so I'm going to go online. I'll still open it up again at the end, so folks who haven't spoken have a chance to speak. But at least in the order in which I've seen the hands, Mr. Jay Walter, you are up first, followed by Judith Boracek. So, Mr. Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jay Walter. I live at 83 Pembroke Street, Newton Corner. I'm a local architect, and I have clients who basically builds additions on homes throughout Newton. And I find that this ordinance, while I don't object to the principles of the ordinance, the way it is written, the permitting process is onerous at best. It requires a homeowner who's building a small addition to get a construction, what they call a construction tree permit, that requires notifying all the neighbors. It requires hiring an arborist. It requires the surveyor to include locating trees not only on the property in question, but also the neighbors' properties. It's expensive. It delays the permitting process because the permit for a building can't go forward until the tree permit is obtained. And while Mark Welch is doing an excellent job, the best he can, I think he's being overwhelmed with the work that this ordinance has created for him. The costs are very high. An arborist for a small job where we were removing one tree was over $3,000. It was a 6-inch arborvitae, and the fee or the penalty fee for that would have been $3,300. Luckily, that site is large enough so that they had alternative planting. But I have other clients who have smaller sites where planting as an option to avoid the fees is just not feasible. So they have to incur the cost of the fees for removing the tree. I just think that the permitting process has to be made easier. It shouldn't be so onerous on the homeowners. The homeowners, frankly, my fees go up because I have to intervene on the homeowners' behalf because it's so complicated. You can't expect a homeowner really to be able to get through the permitting process. So I think it's too complicated. It's very expensive. And while I think it's good to have an arborist involved and a tree protection plan, I think that the whole process needs to be simplified and streamlined, and the fees are too high. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Ms. Boracek, followed by Laura Petrillo. So, Ms. Boracek? You're on mute.
The Judy Boracek, 32 Indian Ridge Road. I called the 14 tree companies that are listed on the city's urban tree forest website. All but 2 said that they did tree plans and permits. 4 who were willing to give me price ranges. The prices ranged from $675 to $1,900. Another arborist said that the price that wouldn't give a range, but he said his prices were approximately $500. All the companies give free estimates for the jobs. Those arborists who were not willing to give prices cited the uniqueness of each project. One example was particularly helpful to me. If a crane is necessary to remove a tree, that raises the price significantly because the crane has to be contracted for a full day. Save a Tree is a company that was also very interesting. The company uses the United States Geographic Information System and other specialized software to produce the required tree protection plan graphics without significant cost. And I'd like to say something about my own experience with tree cutting. The house next door to me was taken down, and at the same time, a very large linden tree and 3 very tall pines were taken down. When we had, and this was done in November, when we had the severe rains in December, water flooded into our basement on the side abutting the removed trees. We had never had water enter the basement before. I support the tree preservation ordinance strongly, including the provision that requires arborists and tree protection plans for neighbors' trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boracek. I apologize for mispronouncing your name. Ms. Petrillo, followed by Dr. Brown.
Hi, thank you. Laura Petrillo, 119 Oxford Road. And I'm a member of both Protect Newton Trees and Mothers Out Front. There's been a lot of discussion tonight about how expensive the tree ordinance is, and I want to highlight the value of trees, which has been absent from the discussion. The reason that these fees and planting requirements are in place are to acknowledge the tremendous value that trees bring to our community. They cool and clean the air, reduce flooding, as we heard, improve mental health. They do so much for us. I got into caring about trees because of my kids. I want there to be trees in Newton for the future generations. And when we cut down mature trees, we simply can't get them back. The plantings don't nearly keep pace with the trees that were there, and it just takes a really long time to get there. So the whole point of giving people pause is so that we can keep these trees around. I really support the preservation ordinance, including the requirement for the arborist and the tree protection plan. We just heard from a resident how important the tree protection plan is to have an arborist make an evaluation to give abutters rights. And I strongly feel that we should not weaken the ordinance. I want to highlight for Councillor Danberg and others that there's already a financial hardship provision in the tree ordinance for property owners who meet the standard for low income used by the city. I heard you mention that we're only talking about the issue for small projects of homeowners, but this is policy that would apply to the developers that you excluded from that statement. So I think we have to think about everyone when we're making these plans, when we're making these decisions and changes. And these tree protection plans are important. We heard from Judy about how possible it is to find an arborist with a reasonable, with a fee that's less than what was quoted. I think that the quotes that we heard have been inflated. And so it's important to just acknowledge that tree protection plans serve an important purpose. And I think that's all I have to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Petrello. Dr. Brown, followed by John Connor. Dr. Brown?
Thank you. Melissa Brown. I live at 949 Chestnut Street in Upper Falls. I'm a member of Protect Newton Trees and Mothers Out Front. And I'd like to speak to the costs of not hiring an arborist. This will result in losing more trees due to damage to their roots. And I want to mention just 3 costly impacts. First, the neighborhood will be hotter for decades, raising utility costs for air conditioning for individual families living on the property where the tree is cut and neighboring families. Studies show that greater heat and more direct sun also mean that the neighborhood's roadways will deteriorate faster, raising city paving costs that will be passed on to all city taxpayers. Impact 2, the neighborhood will have more flooding. Even a 6-inch tree absorbs hundreds of gallons of stormwater every year. One large tree absorbs thousands of gallons. Without that drainage protection, homes near where the tree was cut are more likely to have water in their basements, as was mentioned, costing those families for damages and sump pumps. The city's stormwater drains and roadways are also more burdened by every tree cut, raising city costs. Impact 3, the neighborhood will have more air pollution. Every tree removes particle pollutants from the air. Cutting a tree, especially near busy roadways, increases the rates of asthma and other health problems for neighborhood families, costing money for air filters, medication, and time off work or school. Air quality and public health also cost the city. I'm sure that a property owner looking to cut down a healthy tree is not seeking to harm our community. Awareness of the enormous contributions that trees make to all of us is quite recent. Local ordinances should serve residents and taxpayers by providing regulations that, at the very least, prevent harm to our neighbors and at best foster community and improve it. I think that the tree preservation ordinance does both of those. Please do not weaken or reduce it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Mr. Connor, followed by Mary Ann Payne. Connor?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for making time to consider this. John Connor, 135 Cornell Street. It may be worthwhile to look up the address on Google to see the tree canopy. I'm a resident of Newton since 2007. I'm a tree lover, and the trees on my lot constitute a major fraction of the canopy on Cornell Street. And I attend tonight really to ask the committee consider revising the ordinance, in part to return some aspect of agency to the landowner. And you've heard a lot of these comments before me, and I agree with the folks that have spoken before, arguing that it be modified. Specifically, the ordinance as written has very difficult to approve claims, but also treats individual trees as immortal and does not offer effective consideration for tree management at the end of life. There are considerations for emergencies, but not for responsible stewardship. And I think that this consideration should be included. The example that I'm going to give here is that I have an old, very large silver maple in my backyard with a diameter greater than 40 inches. It's large enough to be under control of the tree ordinance. And we've loved and cherished this tree, but it's now dying. It's lost more than 60% of the limbs that were present 15 years ago. We've had branches fall unpredictably over the last 10 years, despite having the tree deadwooded twice. The tree limbs remaining have moved the centroid of mass so that when the tree falls, and it will eventually, it will be towards the house and it will cause certain damage. Recently, a 40-pound branch broke off from 25 feet up, It almost smashed into a young child that was in my yard at the time, and had that limb connected, it would have been fatal. We investigated having the tree removed this summer, but the tree ordinance is proving to be a hindrance, despite the theoretical investigation of arborist quotes that was mentioned before me. My practical research of actually visiting shows that the prices are much higher than were quoted. In part, this is true. This is because of needing some special equipment. But we've also had arborists tell us that they're now unwilling to make a bid because of the difficulty of working with the city under this new ordinance. We've gotten differing opinions on whether the tree represents a risk and should come down. And so, in a sense, because of the resulting costs that are associated here, the ordinance is effectively blocking us from the management of a tree that is at the end of its life. This puts us in a very difficult situation.
Connor, if I could just ask you to wrap up.
Yeah, really would like to have it rewritten, would like to be able to manage a tree in my yard that does not reflect a significant proportion of the canopy in my yard, does not reflect a significant portion of the canopy in the city of Newton. And removing it would not have any of the consequences that were, I think, irresponsibly raised by earlier speakers. Over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. Mary Ann Payne? And you're still on mute, and you'll be followed by, is that Meg Ward? Sure.
Okay, if the council would allow it, I would like to reserve my time to talk, but I would like to ask Mark Welch if he could address the issues that the previous speaker brought up, as well as the other speaker who is thinking that Mark Welch is overwhelmed. And I would like to ask how things are working out. Would that be okay?
Well,
Can we hear from Mark Welch?
Well, I just want to say, Mr. Welch has joined us tonight. We are joined by the Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Welch, but it is a public comment period, not necessarily a question and answer period. So I'm going to give him an opportunity to address the committee if he wants to respond to anything that was said, but I want you to use your time.
Okay. Okay, fine. I think we have come to the point where, as a community, we have to make sacrifices. Just as the developed world has to sacrifice some money for people, countries that don't have, who didn't initiate all this global warming. We in Newton have to take some responsibility for doing what we can. One of the best things that we can do is to preserve mature trees, because it takes about 25 to 50 years for newly planted trees to replicate the environmental qualities that the mature trees have. We don't have the time for all that. I don't believe that people should be punished for having, unhealthy trees. And I'm sure that within the ordinance, it allows for things like that. I'm also sure that people who are doing these small projects of small additions are spending at least $150,000, and a $2,000 tree assessment is not going to be the factor that stops them from doing that. And if they are facing financial hardships, there is a provision in the ordinance for true financial hardship. And I think that people will just come at you, the council, when you're trying to do your job, and they will just badger until they wear you down. And I hope that you can hold strong. I was here for the whole meeting, the parks, the recreation, the whole thing. It's beautiful. It's happening. It makes Newton a great place, but you have to hold strong against people who resist change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last hand I see at the moment is M. Ward.
Hi. Can you hear me?
You hear
Yes.
us?
We can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. Margaret Ward, 957 Washington Street. I want to express my support for the current tree preservation ordinance, which including the requirement for an arborist and a tree protection plan for neighbors' trees. I'm a little bit confused because in the docket item or in the petition, it specifically references financial hardship. So I want to speak on that. I am struggling to understand the argument of financial hardship. First of all, I'm assuming that we're talking about homeowners and not developers. If a resident is spending tens of thousands on construction to a property, not to mention the future increase in tax burden by the city's assessment, how do these requirements on our current tree ordinance create a financial hardship? Trees actually serve an important role in mitigating financial hardship, so much so that the Commonwealth, under the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, spends millions of dollars planting trees in the residential neighborhoods of gateway cities. Trees help defray the cost of cooling homes in the summer and heating in the winter. And with the current inflation, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that ideal? Furthermore, trees clean our air, and the city of Newton is faced with a lot of pollution. Keep in mind, we have the Mass Pike and I-95. You have interstate highways running through our city, as well as Route 9, and we're seeing more and more congestion and idling of cars at intersections. Protecting our tree canopy is a matter of public health. And to quote Councillor Albright in her argument for a generational ban of cigarettes, she said, quote, "The role of the government is to protect the health and safety of residents." So to that end, I would say protecting our tree canopy serves that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Let me come back. Is there anyone in the room who has changed their mind, been so moved by what they've heard previously or what they haven't heard previously that they now have I filibustered law? Okay.
I'd like to just comment.
Well, let me get to people who haven't spoken yet, okay? And then I have Jessica's iPhone online. So yes, in the room, go ahead.
Very briefly, hi, I'm Dawson Khan from 61 Page Road. I feel very strongly about tree preservation. I won't repeat things that people have already said because the statements in the room and online are profound. We're facing a crisis. I also know that when an ordinance is new and is a multi-part thing, there's working out the kinks that needs to happen over time. But I'm very glad to hear the original intent of let's hold on to this for a year, see what comes up, see if there are ways we can streamline or improve without removing the impact of the ordinance. And the impact of this ordinance is critical for us all. So I'm conservative by nature when it comes to rebuilding things. I want to see how this is playing out. And if people who are having financial hardship are helped, how it works out. But I would hate to see anything that lessens the protective quality and intent of the tree protection ordinance. We need it. So that's all.
Thank you.
So this is two nights in a row for you, right? You were on land use last night, yeah, right?
Well, I am also facing the impact of this because the developer has a proposal to change a property that abuts my property. It would affect a lot of trees. So I'm glad we had the ordinance in place. There's a large developer coming in next to my garden. That's a different issue.
And chickens too, we can talk about that afterwards. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Rebecca Proskauer, 240 Derby Street. My husband already spoke and I just want to do an impassioned plea. And Councilman Oliver, I have to say, I would almost wish you were on our side with the trees, because what the passion you showed, I'm trying to keep. But we sent an email to the council. We included some photos of some of the damage that was done to our trees by our neighbor. It's not just us on our side, it's the neighbors on the other side. There are probably at least 20 trees on the border that were hacked, the roots were cut away at. And I plead that you take a look at those photos too, to see what this neighbor and this contractor did to these shared trees. And now my fear is that those trees, are they gonna survive? Are they gonna be a hazard? When we get a windstorm, is one of those trees gonna come down where the roots have been hacked away on both sides? So I hope you all will take a look at those photos that we sent in the email to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Proskauer. Okay, online I have Jessica's iPhone. I'm guessing it's Jessica that wants to speak, not the iPhone, but AI is gone leaps and bounds, so we'll find out. But Jessica?
Yes, this is Jessica Gross. I live on Parker Street. I'm a homeowner. I have a tree in my backyard that I'm concerned about, and I moved in 12 years ago, didn't mind this tree, but got an email recently from Mayor Fuller and showed a lot of tree damage about trees coming down, being completely uprooted, and being in people's properties. That triggered me to contact an arborist just to find out about the health of the tree, because it is leaning, it is rotting out at the base. There are dead branches that are falling over, and I would, cut the tree back or, have the arborist do something to take care of the health of the tree. I wouldn't cut it down unless they said it was a risk. They told me that although it is a risk, that if they were doing their job on their risk assessment, there would be no way they could fill out that form in a way that the tree ordinance would approve an exemption where I would be okay to take that tree down and not have to replace it. The cost for that replacement would be about $7,000 if I didn't decide to put new trees up. I don't want to take the tree down, except it's leaning. I have small kids. They play in our backyard. It's leaning in the direction of our house. And it's a concern to me from a safety perspective. And I don't really see, there's nothing that they said in the ordinance that can be done about the end of life of trees. You can't really ever predict. There are dead trees that stand for years and years. And there are trees that you get a bad storm and they just get uprooted and come down on property. So I would highly request that the ordinance be reviewed and clear provisions for trees that have health issues be written into the ordinance moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Lisa Monahan. If you're talking, you're still on mute. I can't quite see you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thanks. I'm in my car. I just, whoops, pulled over so I could participate. I'm in Lisa Monahan, 1105 Walnut Street, Newton Highlands, and I'm a practicing architect in Newton doing residential work. And I appreciate the comments made about the value of trees and the health that they bring to citizens and all our community, and the need to maintain them, and also the comment about new processes take time to work out. The tree ordinance and the permitting and getting an arborist on board has added a considerable amount of time and cost. A survey is required. It's not a GIS. You can't get the site information online. It requires somebody to come to the site and actually, survey the property and locate the trees and get the caliper, et cetera. It's not something you can do by, imagery. So I I would be in favor of looking at ways to streamline the process and especially in the case of small lots, making the cost not quite so prohibitive. We do a lot of work for intergenerational, families trying to add, a room for grandparents or kids or, aging in place. And the cost of construction has, doubled in the last decade. And this is just one more expense and it's complicated. So I would encourage the committee to consider looking at ways to not make it quite so burdensome and streamlined, but still keep the things that are good about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monahan. I don't see other hands up. Anyone? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about, so my name's Larry McLeod. I've lived on Wild Road in Woburn for about 23 years now. Watched devastation. Oh my gosh. There's a home, elderly man, I suppose, he's left for good. And the home's been sitting there on a high hill. It's another one of these beautiful tree shrouded homes that should never be taken down in the first place, but it is now, signs up actually today. It's a sign from this well-known developer in the neighborhood who's been quite successful in demolishing our canopy and making huge profits. But here's I guess get the point here. What we have are, and this is based on 23 years of experience, many older trees. It needs some trimming, folks. My neighbor, she trimmed her tree. It had a disastrous looking limb, dead limb. She trimmed it. Listen, I didn't ask her what it cost. But many people would take that tree down. It'd be a shame because it's a beautiful tree. And across the street from us, they have a beautiful tree. They took it down rather than trim it. It only needed trimming. It's so frequently the case that people do not want to spend a little money, few $1,000s perhaps in some cases, but still compared to other improvements they're making on their property, I think, and given the enormous value of stopping the loss of canopy, people need to step up. We're losing everything. We're losing our government. We're losing our society. The people not wanting to step up and do hard things like trim a tree, spend $1,000 to do it. I guess that's my point. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other hands?
Great to hear from Mark.
I just don't like public comment. Then.
No, again, I think there needs to be consideration into the ordinance. Has some practical nature built into it. It shouldn't necessarily be black and white. And that limitation. There's other circumstances on properties that we talked about. Large number of trees, coverage that he has, and to manage trees that he has on his property. So again, I'm not suggesting the ordinance should be abolished, but I think it has some practical nature so homeowners can manage what they have on their property and have someone look at the bigger picture of why someone might want to remove a tree. And make a decision based upon that. It's not a black and white rules, so to speak.
Thank you. Ms. Ward, you want to comment again as well? Perhaps the hand is a remnant? I don't think so. I think that hand went back up, right?
No, sorry. That was a mistake. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. I made a mistake once back in '94. So it happens. Okay, seeing no other comments, I think we'll close public comments for now. Mr. Welch, there were a number of questions that have been asked. If you want to address them, obviously you're up to you if you want to speak, but I know some committee members are interested to hear from you. So anything you want to say, sir?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Krinsman. I think in general, I think a few things and in no particular order, but the first is that I do want to reiterate that we do want to look at anything that we can to make improvements, make changes as we see it. But we really want to get to that really one full cycle, one full year of taking permits and taking feedback, such as tonight. And there was a lot of great comments on all things. And then discussing what we can do to, where could there be improvements if needed and what those might be. I do think, though, that what my takeaway from various comments from both sides, I think really does highlight you need to work with a certified arborist and a qualified arborist anytime you're doing work around trees. Because everyone thinks they know, just like I think I'm a plumber, but if you've ever seen me try to do plumbing in my house, it's a disaster. You really don't, you want to do, you hire an architect to do construction drawings, you hire an arborist to work around trees. It's just the same type of professional trade. And I've heard some things tonight that, for instance, there was a property owner that's concerned about removing a tree in their backyard because of the dollar amount. And, if that is actually the dollar amount, that tree size doesn't require payment because it's an exempt tree. So I urge folks to reach out to us in our office, give us a call or email us if you can, for some more specificity, because I'd hate to see you making decisions that maybe we can help you through a little bit. We have a great staff person, Julie, who answers our phones. And has most of your answers you need. And if she can't help, I'll help. So I think it's important to reach out and ask the questions. We're here to help and we want to walk you through it. We have quite a lot of stuff on our website, probably so much so that's a little bit hard to navigate, but we want to get that info out there. So we ask you to take a look. Some of the questions that I recall, I don't know if I got them all though, is, are we overwhelmed? I'm not going to say we're overwhelmed. Are we doing a lot of work? Is this a large percentage of my time? And this isn't the only role or thing that I manage within the city. Yes, it's a ton of work. But by ordinance, if you've submitted a complete application, we have to give you your permit within 10 business days. We have to do it. It's right there in the ordinance, been that way since the beginning of the ordinance in 1999. With that said, from the time we get a complete application, which is obviously, I can't speak to the time it takes for folks to pull together their documents. Some are quicker than others. We're turning that around in 3 to 6 days is what it takes once we receive a complete application. This is an improvement since a couple of years ago where it was probably 8 to 10 days. That's mainly due to the online permitting system. There are documents that are required. Some are unique to us, but the site plan, for instance, is one that you're likely, if you're doing a construction project, engineering's asking you for a site plan, inspectional services is asking you for a site plan. So it's the same site plan. We're just asking to see that. The documents that we do ask for, believe it or not, when we set out to create the documents that we thought would be important, we based it off successful applications and the ones that do it the right way. So everything that we get, everything we ask for, we were provided before that was a requirement in the prior versions of the ordinance. So it is important to understand that some of the documents are new and it does take time to learn them. But we're here to walk you through the steps. If you look at our website, we have a document for construction on the construction side. So it is there, but it is definitely, I think that's part of the reason for the 1 year is people go through the process, they get to learn it. And, once we hit that 1 year mark, or at least the end of the calendar year, we'll have, a more up-to-date data. But on our side of the ledger, and again, I certainly can appreciate that there's work going in advance before it comes to us. So I can't profess to know the stumbles and the issues people are facing, although we do get a lot of feedback. We are exactly on track to issue the same number of permits that we, on average anyway, that we have in prior years. So we have not seen a dip in the number of applications that we receive. So, on paper anyway, it doesn't appear that we've had a reduction or people's inability to file permits. I think it's also important to remember that when we're talking about tree removal, over 75% of the applications we receive now and before under the prior ordinance didn't involve the removal of trees. There isn't wholesale tree removal taking place on every one of our construction permits. It's only on a much smaller subset, a much smaller number. So in the majority of cases, trees aren't being removed and they're able to work around the project. And even a much smaller case, people speak of the cost of if they had to make a payment for replacement. We are currently, since the change of the ordinance, we're in the same percentile as previous, about 8% or less. And actually so far, it's only been about 3.5% of projects choose to make a payment. They are all able to replicate plantings on site if they remove. So it's the majority of folks are able to navigate the process and have been, at least on the permitting side. And the piece that we aren't talking about, because I think this is definitely more focused on construction, is exempt tree permits. That's the concept. That was something, a new introduction where folks wishing to remove trees unrelated to construction can remove that tree. We've had quite a few of those. We turn those permits in around less than 24 hours. It's a free permit. The tree companies got it down pat now at this point on what they need to turn in, which is some simple documentation, just a picture of the tree and information about where the tree is and what it is. And again, I think the last thing I would say is that, just kind of jumping around, check our website. We need to do some more updating, but the comment that there aren't arborists that do this, we're probably close to 25. I just haven't updated our list. At least 25 arborists that do this regularly and submit permit applications. And I will say that they don't, depending on how they approach it, you don't need a site survey. You don't need it done by a surveyor to provide your tree plan if you don't want to. You can generate a tree plan identifying the trees on the lot by doing a sketch or using aerial photos. So that is something that is not a requirement for that, but in reality, most folks are doing site plans if they're doing construction, because that's a requirement by other agencies within the city. I think I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Welch. Let me see what councilors have a question. Councilor Lovovitz, followed by Danberg. Councilor Lovovitz.
Did you address, thank you for this. Did you address the issue of an aging tree? How do you handle that? If there's a perception it's aging and people are worried about risk of limbs or the whole tree falling down?
Sure. So when we first, just to make the distinction, if we're speaking of a tree that is not associated with construction, anything under 40 inches in diameter, which is the majority of trees, those trees, it doesn't matter what condition they're in. At this time under the current ordinance, you can get a free permit to have that tree removed. Does not require a certified arborist to assess it, just requires the tree company to record the information. If the tree is greater than 39 inches, so 40 inches and bigger, or associated with construction, that's when a qualified and certified arborist needs to be involved. And they should be, like all industries, they should be using the industry set standard to assess what we call risk. And there are different ways of it. There's one way to assess risk using the industry standard, and there are different levels of risk. And the arborist should present the client with the risk levels, what their risk assessment is, and then it's up to, if that risk assessment is the tree is high or extreme, which are the two top levels, or even very likely to fail but a moderate risk, then that tree does not require replacement. So it does require, though, that the person assessing it be qualified to assess risk. So that and the purpose for that is to ensure that we're all, there's electrical code, there's building code. The industry standard is our version of code, and it's important that we follow that. And that is, that's what we look for.
Thank you, Council Lovett. I do see an iPhone with a hand up, but we're not taking any more public comments tonight. Councilor Danberg?
Yes, I think the iPhone is, yes, it is an iPhone, member of the public. What I would say, first of all, thank you, everybody who has come and taken the time to come and to comment tonight. This is what we need. We need to hear from the public, both in favor of keeping the ordinance just as it is, or tweaking the ordinance so that it better takes care of the cases that might be the outliers, which are, for example, Mr. San Roma, who apparently was not able to come tonight, is a retired engineer. He lives on a fixed income. He lives in a small house on a small lot. His wife can no longer climb stairs. He wants to build a bedroom so that they can remain in the home and stay in the home that they've been in for many years. And while he is not on fuel assistance, does not have deferral of taxes, so is not in the what anyone would call low income category, it's still a financial hardship for him to spend the money that is needed for him to be able to do this. And also the delay has been, now Mr. Welch says that they were able to turn around applications in a week, in 10 days, which is wonderful. In his case, it has taken him a couple of months. I think perhaps to get together the information needed so that he can complete the application. The application has been described to me by several people as an onerous process. And Mr. San Roma does not need to or intend to take out any trees. He still has to make an assessment of every tree on his property in order to do this small addition to his home. It's also called a fee. Now, we really don't, the most important thing here is not the terminology, but if you get something for a fee, this is a penalty. It's clearly a penalty and not a fee. In my own case, I voted for this. I knew that we could take another bite at this after a year. And I think that that's what we want to do. I have no desire, nor do I think any of my colleagues have any desire to do away with this ordinance. There were also a couple of comments about developers and the damage that they do to trees. This request has nothing to do with developers. We want to keep this in place because developers have done a great deal of damage to the canopy in our city. And I think in the case of the Proskauers, what you have described is something that we want to prevent from happening. What we're looking at are simple projects that don't wholeheartedly destroy trees in order to put a fence in or for some other reason. When you cut off roots to a neighbor's tree, that tree is going to suffer. And so I think but there are ways that we can tweak this ordinance, I feel, so that the Joe San Romas are not caught in this. While we Jeff, who has described for his wife, who would like to do a small project and be able to have his wife's parents be able to live on one floor at some point and themselves down the road. We're talking about tweaking, and I think we all need to look at this ordinance and see what's good about it, what has prevented damage, and where are we catching the little guys where we shouldn't be catching people like Mr. San Roma. That's enough.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Cameron. I have Councilor Humphrey followed by Oliver. Councilor Humphrey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for Mark following up on your earlier comments. Since there is a defined sort of set of categories of risk below something actually being dead, is that something that you had contemplated previously about, you know, for example, maybe the top highest risk level gets a different treatment, you know, more closer to what we're doing for trees that are already deemed dead? And if not, is that something that we should be contemplating when the year mark rolls around in the spring?
Well, we could certainly, you know, maybe it's a good idea to go over that with the group, with all of you, to discuss what it means when I say, you know, when I discuss the risk rating. There are essentially only 4 ratings. It's low, moderate, high, or extreme. And so our threshold, again, is definitely for high and extreme. We don't require replacement if it's a scenario where replacement would be required. Dead, regardless of risk, we allow for removal. So I guess that's kind of a corollary to this, because it's not actually part of the risk assessment. It's a standard form that's set by industry standard. So we could certainly look at it, but the cutoff that we've created, we feel is appropriate and similar. For instance, Brookline, I'm sorry, not Brookline, Cambridge requires the same form, the same format, and theirs is essentially the same definition as us as well on what their threshold for replacement isn't.
So, okay, so then for my clarity, so your opinion is that, let's say someone is looking at a tree that's at extreme risk, and that's what it's been, you know, assessed at by someone qualified to make that assessment. You're saying that the ordinance as written already has provisions accounting for that. And if that's what somebody's concerned about, then they are, I mean, they're going to have to do the paperwork as usual, but that they are relatively protected here as a homeowner.
Correct. Yes, correct. So the ordinance obviously doesn't use the specific terminology. Off the top of my head, I should have it in front of me, uses terminology like dead, dangerous, something in those words. We've taken that to mean, and we used this before we changed the ordinance. We expect the tree to be assessed for risk, and that those categories, those mid and up categories equal that definition within the ordinance, qualify as that definition for the ordinance, and we can take them down. So it does already exist. We are already capturing that. I wonder then if,
because it is a formalized sort of industry standard thing, perhaps it should be explicitly spelled out in the ordinance using that terminology so that that's clearer. Not even to the homeowners necessarily, but an arborist could look at it and say, oh, okay, under this ordinance, you know, you don't have to pay for.
Yeah, we could. I think like anything, just writing contracts and writing law, I would, ordinances and things like that, it would be something a little more generic. And not generic, but we would say follow the American National Standards Institute, you know, and then cite the number and not use those words, because I'm sure at some point in the future it will change again, because it changed once before. It will change again. In fact, they're talking about revamping the risk assessment criteria in the next couple of years. So,
but you would say, as it's written currently, your opinion is that a homeowner who has a, you know, legitimate concern that a tree is at pretty serious risk of, you know, falling maybe on their house or wherever, that's already accounted for in the ordinance, and that they're not being sort of constricted on that.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Oliver?
Great, thank you. Being somewhat new to programs and services,
welcome.
Thank you. Think I've ever spoken about the tree ordinance. And I think I might be a little bit more sympathetic to the idea than you might think I am. At least there you go. I was just gonna say, I knew you were gonna say that.
The trees.
So it does seem to me that at the end of this conversation, I think Councilor Danberg is right in the sense that we put the first iteration out there, or an updated iteration, less than 12 months ago. I'm pretty sure that I heard several people in this room say, it's probably not perfect. So we'll come back to it in a year and we'll edit. Well, that's what I'm hearing we've got to do. Period. Like, the idea, I don't think, is to save all trees no matter what the human circumstance on the ground is, save the trees. It's save the trees every time it's entirely possible. Let's work around removing trees whenever possible, but let's facilitate the needs on the ground. At least that's how I've heard it. That's at least how I'm thinking about it at this point. And I've heard a couple of really good instances where we need to figure out if we're going to address certain situations, which way we're going to kind of shade our decisions. Yep, I worked that one in there too. But it does seem to me that it is a good conversation. I appreciate hearing these comments. We need to hear these comments. And I think from here, I think really, I'm just gonna stay seated and shut up. But are we holding this one for future conversation? Are we punting until we got that? Well, we're coming up on a year when, I guess? March. So I think it would be a hold, right?
Yeah, my recommendation is definitely to hold.
Okay.
But certainly always up to the committee. Councilor Malky.
I just had one comment. I just wanted to kind of expand on one of the points that Mark made, that anytime you're working around trees, you really should have a certified arborist, because, to use these constituents example, the intent is of the couple was not to, they had no plans to remove any trees, but when you look at the, assessments database, like lots of tree canopy in the backyard, and what a lot of people I think don't think of when they're dealing with construction is it's not just where you're putting the footprint, it's where is the contractor gonna store the building materials, where is the truck gonna drive over to get to where they're going, where is footprint is here, is the excavation gonna go out to here, and that's just on the person's property. And if they in fact do want to save the trees, it's in their interest to have the arborist throughout the tree protection plan so that they're not damaging their own trees and having them decline in 5 years, and then you've got to pay to cut them down, which is generally probably more than late pruning. And somebody mentioned the risk of, I think it was the Proskauers worrying about the trees, or maybe, I don't know if it was your side or the other neighbor's side, where the roots were cut and what's gonna happen. And Ken Parker told me about project next to him that cut his evergreens roots, tried to protect it during the special permit process, but it wasn't protected enough. And roots got cut on his tree because of the excavation coming so close to it, and the tree fell on his house. There's a reason you want to protect the birds. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other comments before we entertain motions? Councilor Lovelace.
I just wondered if it would be helpful to residents to have like an FAQ, frequently asked questions. What's that?
It's on Mark's website.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to thank all of you guys who stuck out the whole meeting. I hope you enjoyed learning about parks and lights and bathrooms. But this is about as late as we've gone in quite a while, so
But
you guys got great endurance. Okay, but back to you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It might be helpful to look at the ones that exist, and point it out, to see if it can be refined.
If there's any
based on the feedback that people give and the concerns, and maybe, some of those questions could be more easily accessed. I mean, the answers to those concerns could be more easily accessed. So I think it would be worthwhile looking at those, to see if they can be refined or added to take into consideration some of the things that have been said tonight.
And I don't know if Mr. Welch is gonna find it. My recollection is it was something like no application fee or cost for removal of a dead or significantly compromised tree, but I could be wrong if that was it. Maybe it's not, I don't know. Mr. Welch, your hand is up. Did you wanna?
I was just gonna jump in on the frequently asked questions or anything for that matter. We do try to update it from time to time, but we're always looking for feedback on what's there and what questions aren't answered or other things. So please feel free to send them my way or send comments my way so that we can add to it. So we do try to update it whenever we can.
Maybe we can also address the infrequently asked questions. Got it.
Sure.
All right, any other council comments here before we entertain motions?
Do you want to take the one comment that still has the head up?
I think we reopen public comment, we gotta let everyone comment, unfortunately. And the hour is late. But iPhone person, please send us your email and let us know what your thoughts are. Motions?
I'll move hold.
Councilor Maliki has moved hold. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor of hold, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That is 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Hello. All those in favor of adjournment? Awesome. Adjourn. Thank you, everyone.